All right. Well, welcome to the March 2023 digest, where I'm going through all the media that I finished by March 2023. So let's just get right into it, I guess. Oh no, once again, I say that every time, I guess, but this time it's probably going to be shorter again. I've watched quite a few things, I would say, but I feel like I don't have too much to say about them, but I guess we'll see. So, and I also have no idea. Do people prefer this shorter, longer? I got no idea. Anyway, let's get to it. First thing was Attack on Titan, the final season, the final chapters, special one, which was 1 hour long. It's basically 3 episodes, continuing from the end of season 4, part 2. Came out on the 4th of March. And this was great. This was 5 out of 5. In terms of, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, purely because if you want to see, I guess most of my thoughts on this, go to Secondary ENT, which is Kyle Entertainment's second channel, and we got all four of us. We talked about this episode in quite a bit of detail, so I'll probably go there. But generally, I thought this was really great. It covers the chapters 131, 32, 33, and part of 134, which are some of my favorite chapters in Attack on Titan. Like this whole rest of the story is basically my favorite part of the entire story of Attack on Titan. And it does it well. I think it's just really interestingly directed, particularly the beginning scene with essentially, I guess, that first like episode, quote unquote, where you've got Eren doing the rumbling basically, and you're getting all of these really interestingly directed shots of all the damage and everything. I thought that was really good. You get like the one spinning shot where you're seeing the entire founding Titan, like from the back to the front. And I really like how it's a very small thing, and I'm sure no one even remembers, but like the guy shoots himself in the head, and you get like this tiny shot of like a flower, which is like an insert shot right before the freedom panel, I think. And like the flowers of it burn away, and like that's just an example of one of the small directing things that make this so great, which is like all this little attention to detail, where it's like you didn't need that insert shot there, but you know they put it there and it was really neat. But yeah, I don't know. I have very few notes. The ending song, we get like an ending song, Under the Tree or something, I think it's what it's called, by Sim. That was great. I've been listening to that non-stop ever since this came out. It's been a while since this came out as well, 4th of March. But it was great. Ending song's great. Directing great. I talked about the flower shots. And check out the video on Secondary NT. But yeah, this was great. Background image here is Reiner and attacking the Beast Titan, which was the greatest moment, I would say, in all of this. Looks so cool. I've been hyping it up. This is the end of chapter 134. There's still some good stuff from 134 to come. I'm looking forward to it. I won't spoil anything, but I am very excited for the next one, especially to see how everyone reacts to the ending. That's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's it. I guess the other thing is that I would say that how do I feel about this as a special, like 1 hours? I personally would have preferred if this and the next part had all come out in a single movie, and if it was like released at the movies with like a proper budget and time and everything, I think that would have been ideal. I don't know why they did this. Like when they first published the announcement, whether I think it was Mappa who did it, they talked about how, oh, we wish we could have done this in one part, but we couldn't, so we're doing it in 2 parts, and that didn't really make sense. Like, surely they can just choose. Like, I know they're on the production committee, so I don't know why they couldn't just choose when to bring this out. I don't know, money and stuff probably, but anyway, Attack on Titan, exciting stuff. Next thing was started a long time ago, so in the 15th of January, and I finished it right at the end of this month because I took a bit of a time off from it when I went to currently in the US, so while I've been in the US. But The Last of Us 2023 on HBO, and you can see a nice picture of a giraffe. What a great scene this was. So in regard to the Last of Us, my history is that I don't think I even really heard much about it. I might have heard the name for a while, but back when the second game came out, I heard a lot about that and a lot of controversies with that and everything, and everyone hating it and loving it and blah, blah, blah. So I decided to watch the cutscenes for the first one because it's like, oh, what's this story about? So I watched that on YouTube. It was pretty short. I don't remember how long it was, like maybe an hour or something, maybe a bit longer, but I didn't really, like, I got the gist of it, the storyline. I understood like the high level beats and everything, but I didn't really know, I couldn't tell you exactly what happens, I guess. Then I watched the entire gameplay, like a silent gameplay through of The Last of Us 2, and I thought that was a really good, that was a very compelling story. And I won't spoil anything in case people have only seen this show, but I'm very excited to see how that gets adapted because that was a fantastic story that I watched. and I'm interested to play it one day. I know the first one came out for PC, so eventually I'll play that. It'll probably be on this Media Digest in the coming months, but yeah, the second one's a bit out, but one day I'll play it when it's eventually out. But okay, that's my background. Overall thoughts, I thought this was very good, 4 out of 5. It's much better than what I remember of the game, which is interesting. It feels like a good adaptation. Like the stuff I remember, especially I remember the introductory stuff, because I guess a lot of that was a cutscene, I would assume, from the game, because I remember that pretty verbatim. I thought that was adapted perfectly. But I don't remember the story well enough, I guess, to comment on it. It's also been so long since I started watching this, and I'm sure if you care about this at all, you've seen a million people talk about it, you've seen reactions to it, you've seen reviews. I don't have anything interesting to say. What have I got? I said I think that episode 1 is probably the best, because it's the one that got me the most emotionally involved, with Sarah dying. That actually got to me. I wasn't expecting the show to actually get to me, you know. It's just a stupid video game, you know. When do they ever make you cry? But yeah, it got to me. I thought it was good. The plane landing was sick, or the plane crashing, I guess, in episode 1. That was sick. And generally, I just really love outbreaks and things. Like I love zombie movies and zombie media. I've seen like 8 seasons of The Walking Dead or something. I've seen I was Train to Busan. I've seen like I think if there's a zombie movie, I've probably at least heard of it, or if not, I've probably seen it. One of my favorite movies I've ever seen is a zombie movie. But I'm not going to say more about that for spoilers. But so yeah, I love The Outbreak, and this did a really good job. This is probably the best job I've seen in a while of handling how the outbreak happens and just seeing the destruction of it and how quickly it happens and everything. I thought that was done really well. And I kind of wish there was more of that. We got a tease of it in either episode 2 or 3, where we go to I don't even remember the country, some country where the outbreak started, and we get like a doctor there or an epidemiologist or something. I don't know what it was, some fungus expert. But yeah, I wish we saw more of that. But overall, it was really good. But I have one complaint, which I've actually written in my notes, which is the one thing I was looking forward to, they didn't include, which was the scene right at the end before they go to the hospital. I remember Ellie drowning, and it was like a really intense, like flash river or whatever they call it, where it just comes out of nowhere, and Ellie's drowning and tries to save her or something. And that was really visceral and was one of the main things I remembered from the game and actually wanted to see, and they skipped over it, so that was disappointing. But yeah, overall great. What else is there? Episode 3, everyone obviously loves that. I thought that was good. It wasn't like the greatest thing of modern cinema in the last 10 years or whatever, but it was great. I thought the finale was well done. Scene with the cannibal guy, not the scene, the episode with the cannibal guy was great. I think generally it's just really good, well paced. I'm glad they did it in a season. They didn't stretch it out over multiple seasons or anything. I think this was done really well. But yeah, that's The Last of Us. Not much to say. Oh boy. Okay. Then I watched, as recommended by Kyle Entertainment at the end of, in the comments of last Media Digest. So if you're interested, you should comment what you want me to watch. I decided to watch Berserk, The Golden Age. I watched all 3 movies, and I'll probably talk about them here in succession. But the first one, Berserk, The Golden Age, Arc 1, The Egg of the King, came out in 2012. Which is, interestingly enough, the same year that the second movie came out, but just at the end of the year, whereas this came out in the beginning, I think February or something. This was a movie, 1 hour and 16 minutes, and I watched it a few days ago, so the 27th of March. I had to like pack in a bunch of stuff that I had to finish before this month was over, but yeah. So, before I say overall thoughts or anything, I should say that I remember because what happens, I don't remember exactly the context, but I've definitely seen a scene of this. It was involving Skull Knight fighting someone. If I were to guess, I think it would be when he goes and sees Rickert or something, that scene at the end. But I'd seen that before, like a few years ago, so I remembered that, and that's the only thing I'd seen from this that I remember. So it was pretty fresh to see this. And it's also important to say I did watch the dub of this because I just love the 97 Berserk dub, so I don't care what the sub sounds like. I didn't watch any of that sub. I guess I did when I was going over these notes again. I just wanted to see what the comparisons of some scenes are, so I watched the sub. But it was great to see the dub. All the voice actors were back. Kuska was there. I love the Kuska voice actor. She's my favorite. Griffith, I think everyone except for Caucus, interestingly. Which I don't know what happened there. Maybe did the actor pass away or something? I got no idea. But he sounds very different. I think he sounds much better in 97, but here he sounds more like a real person, I guess, than a caricature. But I want Corcus caricature, all right. But all the actors are great. Love the dub, but that's it. But overall thoughts, I guess I'll stick to this movie. I guess I can talk generally. The overall thoughts would be that, firstly, if I were to rank these movies, I would say, actually, let me give a score. This one is 3 out of 5. So it was pretty good. I would generally say, we're talking about all three movies, I would say that 97 is significantly better. These movies have a lot of issues. Sorry, these movies have a lot of issues that are not present in 97. They feel like a very different experience than 97. I'll probably talk about this as we go through the notes, but yeah, and I think a lot of these notes will be comparisons to 97 just because it's the thing I've remembered most vividly because I only watched it last month compared to the manga that I don't really remember that much. But yeah, I would say they're good, but they're nothing near as good as 97, especially this movie. This movie was easily the worst of the three, so it's 3 out of 5. It's still a good movie. But yeah, let's go through the notes. So it opens with a Falco shot, so Attack on Titan reference, but it opens basically with Guts looking, I think it's Guts, maybe some guy who died, I don't remember, but they're looking up to the sky, there's birds, there's projectiles, and like this is like a motif that you see throughout all three movies where you get like a bird shot and someone like looking up to the sky. Like it happens with Guts, it happens with Griffith at some point, it happens at other points as well, but I have no idea what it is. I'm sure usually stuff like that is referring to freedom or something, but I got no clue. That happens. Then I guess immediately you see that it's a CGI movie, which I did know was a CGI movie mostly. There are a lot of 2D elements, and especially as the movies go on, you get more and more of the 2D stuff. But it's just shocking how no, I guess it's not. I guess bad is the word to say. Like a very low quality textures for the faces and stuff. Like the lighting and like the positioning of stuff and movement is all decent. Actually, the movement's a bit, especially in these early on movies. I guess this first movie, it's very choppy and all that. But the lighting is great, but everything else just looks really bad. Especially like I didn't know what year this came out when I watched it. And I only looked it up afterwards. But I would have assumed this was like really early 2000s or something for just how bad it looked in terms of textures and movement and all that. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, well, the actors are the same except for Corcus. You get a new intro, which, I mean, it's not really new. It's the first time we're seeing this, but it's interesting that a movie has an opening. But my big complaint about 97 was that the opening, it's a good song. Like, I like the song, but it has nothing to do with Berserk, and it doesn't feel like Berserk at all. When I'm watching that, I'm like, why is the rest of the show so cohesive? And it's like directing and style and vibes and everything, but the opening is so different. This one is the complete opposite, where I love the opening. The vibes are great. It feels like Berserk. It feels cohesive with the rest of the movie. It's kind of, the visuals are a bit weird. Like you've got Farnese, Puck, and you got Shirke in there for some reason, and she doesn't show up at all. But it's great. I like the opening. Generally pretty good. It's also very interesting compared to, a lot of this is going to be compared to 97, but it's interesting how bright Berserk is in this. Like when I reflect on 97, I think of a lot of darkness and like dark colors and like crimson, dark reds and everything. But when I think of this, I think of like this background image here with Griffith, where a lot of the time it's just really bright and vibrant, and it feels like a very different type of Berserk to, I guess, both 97 and the manga, because the manga itself is also very, I'd say dark most of the time, where it's like extreme shading and harsh lighting and all that, whereas this is very different. It feels, what did I write? It feels like the action scenes have a different, oh yeah, so the directing for this, let's say we're just talking about this first movie, it's fine, it's passable, but the action scenes are directed very well, and it kind of feels like it's directed by a different person or something, because of just how much emphasis is placed on it, and like when an action scene starts, it feels like you've like changed scenes in a movie or something, where now it feels like the serious stuff is happening, or the other stuff was like nonsense, and this is like where all the energy and everything is going into, which is strange because like Berserk is not really about the fighting. Like there's like, I guess the next movie there's a pretty big fight, but it's not even the fight that's important there. It's kind of like the character stuff. But I don't know, I love the fights in this basically, and I love it way more than how it's directed in the rest of the movie, which is ironic because I think it should be the other way around, but that's fine. But oh, just one fight I wanted to talk about was the first one here, where you get when Guts basically gets confronted by the Band of the Hawk the first time, where they like come on horses and they try and attack him. I thought that was really well directed. But the main thing is when Casca comes and takes over, and it's like a one-on-one young Guts versus young Casca fight, and it's so cool because it's like you've got Guts seeing Casca both have a weapon on a horse and have the crossbow at the same time, so he has to like focus on both things and be prepared for her to shoot and to attack with the sword, which is so cool, like so much better than anything I remember from 97. Oh, and I guess I should say the action is just infinitely better than 97. There was basically no action in the 97 version, but anyway. But the really cool thing as well is when Guts like hits her sword and she's able to like block it. Basically, her hand like vibrates and it's like you can feel the pain or like the thing, like the shock, her body basically absorbing that entire shock. And like that's a really good action directing, I guess, which I thought was really cool. And generally like stuff like that is just, I'm not going to comment on it every time, but it's just throughout this movie, the action's really well done like that. The music also feels a lot more modern. Like the 97 feels very like classical kind of themes, and I don't know anything about music. I say this every time I talk about music, but it just feels more modern. I don't know what to say, but I do love the music. There's a few tracks I'll talk about here as we go on, but yeah, it's good. It's just not as good as the. It's different. Firstly, it's different from 97, but I love like there's 3 tracks I think from 97. What is it? Forces, Guts, and I don't even know what the name is, but there's one that I can like another one that I really love. In this one, there's a few, and we'll talk about it, but yeah, it's just very different. Another very interesting directing thing is that whenever there's a flashback or like a traumatic moment in this, they will go to a very low frame rate, and I absolutely detest that. Right, I hate it. I hate it when the was it that Spider-Verse movie when that did it? I hated it, and I hate it here too. And it ruins otherwise a really good scene. So like the first one here is the Gambino flashback, which in its own right is just it's well directed. It looks really cool. It does a good job of characterizing Guts. We even see a little bit of Donovan, even though we don't see see everything. So it's better than 97 in that regard, but it's so annoying. I don't know why. I just have like this hatred of like, it feels like it's stuttering or something. And it just feels so unnecessary and ruins the otherwise really great scene. But yeah, anyway. But it's definitely unique. I guess I can say that. I've never seen that before, especially in animation. But yeah, and I guess I kind of warmed up to it toward the end, but yeah, I still am not a big fan of it. Next note, and I made a timestamp, so 1950. I said they used the meme music because when I heard it, I was like, this is from a meme. Like I know this. Like what came first? Was it the meme and they're referencing the music, or was it this and the meme is referencing this movie? It's the dum 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 dum. Like if you know it, you know it. But after more consideration, I realized it's from a Kyle Entertainment video. So maybe it's from multiple of his videos, and maybe that's why I know it. But I recognized it immediately. And when I looked it up, it's from the I Wish It Happened video from the beginning of that. But I thought that was pretty funny. Another thing is that Griffith looks great in these movies. Like look at him here. He looks so angelic and like otherworldly. He looks like way better here than he does in 97, where he looks a bit more serious and more like earthly and kind of intense, whereas here he looks like angelic and godlike, whatever, which is kind of works for him. But yeah, it looks great. Another thing is that this first movie feels very heavy-handed in the moments that feel important. Whereas in 97, a lot of the times where you have a big character moment where as a manga reader you're watching and you're like, okay, this is an important scene. The anime kind of points it out to you, the 97 anime, by like having an important like soundtrack or something play where you got like Guts playing and it's like, oh, this is a really emotionally impactful scene. Like this is the first time Guts and Casca are talking and we know what happens with their story, blah, blah, blah. But in this, it feels very heavy-handed where the pace will like come to a crawl and you'll be focusing on this scene and it'll be like out of nowhere it'll feel so important even though ostensibly it isn't that important. But yeah, I just feel like it handles it quite poorly compared to how 97 did it. I hate how I don't really have much to say beyond comparisons, but that's really all. It's hard to talk about this without comparing it to something. Like I wonder what it would be like to watch this first, because I guess my next point here ties directly into that, which is that you start off with the typical I think it's Bazuso or something, when Guts does that, he meets Griffith, they have their fight, and then he's like, you belong to me, Guts. He like does that thing. Then immediately there's a 3-year time skip, and we skip basically all of Guts' characterization, and all of the relationship between Griffith and Guts, and it's insane that they skipped it. Like we skip all of the "don't touch me" stuff, and how Guts doesn't want to be touched and he doesn't like being around people, but he warms up to them eventually. We skip all of that. We skip the naked shower scene with Griffith. Oh my god, like their relationship is just non-existent because of this 3-year time skip, and it just comes out of nowhere and it ruins the entire movie, and possibly the entire trilogy. Not just this time skip, but just how fast these movies go, where you get all these emotional moments where it's like characters reflecting on the past, but to us the past was like 10 minutes ago, where for instance, after the 3-year time skip, they Guts and Griffith have like a conversation in this like beautiful hill, and they're like, oh, remember all those years ago when we had that fight, and look how times have changed, and it was literally like 8 minutes ago or something, and it feels like it just happened. And I'm like, how is Guts like gone from who he was there to who he is now? And we're meant to think that it's a big change, even though it just happened like on screen. I don't know, it's ridiculous. I don't know how they managed to mess that up, but anyway, yeah, it's very jarring. What else? Then I have like this question. I doubt anyone's gonna know this, but Zod and Guts fight basically, and it feels like at some point the choreography used there, where like Guts kind of like hits past his sword and gets hits Zod like on the shoulder or whatever. It feels like it's a direct mimic of like what the Guts and Griffith fight will be when Guts is leaving the Band of the Hawk. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it feels very similar. So I wonder if that's intentional. I wonder if anyone knows. I don't know how familiar people are with these Berserk movies. I got no idea how popular this is either. I know I would assume the 97 one is like way more popular because it's the one I'd heard a lot about. But yeah, I don't know. Oh, excuse me. There's a great scene in this movie though, which is about how you got Guts and Griffith. They're like sitting on the edge of some like staircase where eventually Charlotte's gonna come and like trip over. But you got Guts being scared by the Baelet and Griffith like catching him, and then Griffith like cracks up laughing, and it feels very genuine. Like it makes you see the kindness like inside Griffith and like the kid he used to be. And these movies do a very good job of that, of characterizing Griffith as these two people, like who he was when he was younger and who he is now, I guess. I think that does a really good job. And you can still see who he was like inside him. But yeah, that scene was like the emblematic scene of that. Then we get Adonis's death. I thought that was really great in this. I think this was done even, like, as much as I love it in 97, I think it was done better here, where it's like there's no, at least I don't remember there being any intense music or anything. I think it's just the entire scene, the tragedy of it is carried by the kid just like gasping for breath for like 20 seconds. He just like keeps gasping, but Gus just doesn't know what to do. And like just basking in that scene for such a long time is what makes it so effective. So I thought that was really done well. Like there are scenes in this which are done really well. It's just like there's a cohesive whole. It's just so poorly made. Well, not poorly made. You know, they put effort into it or whatever, but it's like it misses for some reason for me. I hate speaking negatively, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. You know, for these media digests. What is this? After Griffith's... Oh, yeah, so Griffith has his big dream speech. It's basically the same thing as in 97, but... yeah, while he's listening to his speech, or I think afterwards, Casca like looks at Guts, and we get like this behind shot of Guts where it's just complete silence, and it's him like making these like grunting and like panting noises, where it's like this is a big moment for Guts, and it's really interesting to see it that way. I thought that was well done. And just more on Griffith's speech here, in this context, and I guess it applies every form of his speech, the manga, the anime, the other anime, this anime, whatever. It feels kind of relatable, where it feels like a scene where Griffith is spouting this very like confident, grand statement about dreams and how he would never respect anyone who doesn't have a dream. And it feels like he has this not... Like he says it so confidently, but I'm sure that he's not actually very confident in this. And like if anyone was to push him on it, he probably wouldn't know what to say. And it feels very relatable in that way, where people will make these grand claims. Like I do it all the time. But when pushed on it, you're like, I guess I don't know why I'm feeling so strongly about this. Maybe this isn't the truth. Maybe it's just a lie I'm putting on, you know, to appease my ideals or something. But I thought that was really relatable. Then at the end of this scene, you get Guts like walking down the stairs, and he plays this weird music. It reminded me of the Incredibles music, which is like a how do you even describe it? It's kind of like a spy music. I don't know what to say, but it was a bit weird. I don't know. It works well, but it feels very sinister for to end that scene where Guts in that moment is, I would say he's feeling very confused and crushed and like doesn't really know what to do with his life, and but has a somewhat idea of like what a goal could be now. But in this moment, it feels like Guts is gonna like, I don't even know, like go on a massacre or something. Like it feels like he's gonna plan to do something terrible or go down the wrong path or something. Like I don't know what that scene, what that music was used for, but it was a bit weird. But yeah, then the movie ends, and this was a pretty very average 3 out of 5. It'd probably be like a 2.5 or something, but a 3 out of 5. And the movie, what's interesting, all three of these movies end with a teaser for what happens next, which is weird. It basically summarizes the next movie. I watched like part of it, and then I realized it was a summary basically, so I skipped it. But this is weird. It's a brave concept, I guess, to spoil, but I guess that happens a lot in anime. But then we get the amazing credits for this thing, the ED, which is perfect. This is way better than the opening. It's the greatest thing. Maybe it is probably the greatest thing to come with this movie here, where you got like this thin red like text, which is like the perfect Berserk color. I don't know why, but it just is. It's, I was gonna say some cringe thing about blood or something. I don't know, but yeah, the music, it has this song. I think it's called Blood and Guts. But I've listened to it so much since it's happened, and it feels very like classical. And I had to initially look up whether it was made for this or whether it was like an existing classical song that, like, for things like Hunt x Hunter, they'll often take like classical songs or whatever and just use them. But apparently it was made just for this movie, which is impressive. But yeah, it's in English, a lot of it, maybe all of it, I don't know. But it's like blood and guts. It's great. I love it so much. And that'll stick with me forever. Like I'll be listening to that non-stop for a long time. What have I got to say? Oh, I guess the one criticism I guess I made of it is that it's a perfect song and it's perfect for Berserk, but the tone of this ED kind of doesn't match the ending tone, which was like a bit of a sinister, like, what's going on here with Guts kind of thing. Like I feel like this ending, the way it's done and the like tone of the way that this like song is played or whatever, I feel like it would have been better for the next movie or the movie after. And they do play this song, I think, right at the end of the third movie, but it feels kind of different. Maybe they arranged it in a different way or something, but I don't know. Then my last note for this movie was that apparently Judo, when I looked it up, is voiced by Eren's voice actor, which is cool, in Japanese, not in English. But yeah, I don't know, I've never heard him, but it would be interesting. I can't imagine Judo having, like, the voice of Judo in the dub is like my voice of Judo. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing it, so I wonder what Eren's voice actor would sound like. But yeah, Golden Age, Arc 1, The Egg of the King, for 3 out of 5. Next one, Berserk, The Golden Age Arc 2, The Battle for Doldrey. So this also came out in 2012, an hour and 33 minutes, so these movies get progressively longer. I watched this on the same night as the first one. I was intending to watch all three, but yeah, I had enough after this. I was like, okay, I gotta take a break before I watch this mammoth of the last one, which is like almost 2 hours long. But generally, this was a lot better. I think of the three, this is probably, I mean, this is my favorite of the three. This was really well done. I would say this is a legitimately good adaptation of Berserk. It's up there with 97. It wouldn't be as good. I really love 97. It probably should be a 5 out of 5, but I think 4 out of 5 is pretty fair for that. But this is probably only just behind that. I thought this was really well done. But yeah, let's go through the notes. So, oh, they do the, I read a very negative note. I said, God damn, I don't like this low frame rate Casca backstory thing. Because that scene is one of the best scenes in this entire trilogy, where it's an incredibly much more violent portrayal of Casca, almost, or I guess I don't know if she got raped, but at least attempted rape on her when she was younger, and like Griffith coming in and saving her. But it's just so much more brutal and it just shows how much, like, how traumatic it would be in a way that 97 just didn't even get close to. And the way it's directed and the music, and how when Griffith comes in, like, you get this shot of like Asuka like looking at the camera and like looking at us, and it's like, oh, it's really well done. And yeah, it's so great, except it's a low frame rate and I hate it. But I understand what they're going for, because it's traumatic, and how like Casca wouldn't remember this, that like it would be a traumatic memory for her to remember, and she'd be like in and out of consciousness or whatever. But I don't know, I hate it as a concept, except when we talk about this later in this movie, they do it really well. But for this scene and for the gut scene I talked about before, I don't like it. But the scenes themselves are masterpieces. They're very well done. All of these like weird abstract like montage or the abstract ways of directing, which are not like typical of these kind of things. They're really well done in these movies, except for those damn low frame rate. God damn, my nose is always itchy in these things. I wonder why. Anyway, Guts fighting the 100 Men is great. So the choreography here is just, night and day compared to 97. And as always, they emphasize the directing of the choreography in this. I don't know why, but they do it, and it's really well done. I like how, one particular thing I like, I guess, is how when Guts is alone and like Casca's gone, he like has this moment where he's like reflecting of like, why am I doing this? Why am I fighting these 100 men? And the audio is like really dulled because it's like he's like Guts is getting more enraged and more tired as it's going on, and that's like a really cool directing choice, I guess, or sound directing or whatever it is. And there was also a great shot where Guts has like killed all these men, and he looks at them and they all like freak out, and they all like trample Suradon, which is really funny. He's a bit of less of a presence in this, I guess, compared to 97, like less comedy for him. He loves spinning that damn thing though. He spins his like weapons so many times throughout these movies. I love it. But yeah, they trample him and it's really great. Generally, action just great. Whenever there's action, just assume I love it. Then I have a question for all my Berserk manga heads out there. What is Chuda? Like Chuda is obviously I know it's the empire or army or whatever that Midland is facing, but where's Kushan? Like I know Kushan is like the like do they come from the ashes of Chuda or something? Like how do these two things relate? I have no memory of it whatsoever. Obviously Kushan becomes a greater threat than Chuda ever was, and does Midland still exist at that point? I guess it does because Griffith takes over at some point. I don't know. I just don't know what Chuda is. So let me know if you're listening and you know what Chuda is and how Kushan relates to this and what happens to Midland and all that. Let me know. Then I wrote the General Boscon, which is great. What a great guy. He's always great in 97 in this. His voice actor sounds very familiar, but I looked it up and he's in nothing I recognize. So I don't know if anyone out there is like, oh yeah, I listened to the dub of this movie and I remember General Boscon. He's this guy and like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hell yeah, let me know. Then I also said I completely forgot, like in basically the big like second arc of this movie is the battle for Doldrey. That's why it's titled that. And the way they win this battle basically is by having Suradon be like shepherded in there by Casca, like her acting as like a guard, like shepherding him back, but it's like an ambush or whatever. But I don't remember that at all. Was that the case in 97? And I just like completely forgot from something I watched 2 weeks ago, like I guess. And I wonder if it's like that in the manga. It works like logically. I was just really surprised that I didn't remember it happening before. Anyway. But yeah, the battle happens, the big battle for Doldrey. Boscon versus Guts is really cool. It's interesting that, what's his name? Zod doesn't show up in this like he did in 97. I thought that was a manga thing, but maybe it was 97 original. Because in that, like, he throws his weapon to Guts and Guts catches it. But in this, it was kind of a subversion for me, because when Guts is like charging up to like take off Boscon's head, I'm like, okay, he can't do it yet because he hasn't got Zod's sword, but then he did it and I was like, whoa, I guess he did it. That's crazy. So that was very effective, probably for the wrong reason, but yeah. And then Adon spins his spear a bunch. I love that, cool gimmick. And then when the battle is over, you get Corcus, who's about to cheer, like to get the army to cheer, and he's going to be the first one, but then Pippin steals it, and then Pippin cheers, and then the whole army cheers, and Corcus is like, oh, god damn it. I thought that was funny. Cool bit of characterization there. Then I had this brilliant idea of Star Wars Visions for Berserk, where whoever owns the rights to Berserk, they should hire it out to, like, they should hire a bunch of anime studios and get them all to adapt a single scene in their own style, in their own interpretation, in their own unique way, whatever. Like, pick a big scene from whether it be the Golden Age or afterwards, like, and just adapt it however you want, using your own creative vision. Like, it would be so cool. Like, Star Wars Visions did it so well. It was a bit different because they didn't adapt any scenes or anything. They just adapted Star Wars as a concept and like what was Star Wars to them, and that was really great. One of the greatest things Star Wars has ever made. And Berserk would be really cool like that. Whether honestly they don't have to adapt scenes. Maybe if they did, just try and show what Berserk is to them. But I feel like that'd be a bit more generic because Berserk that's already happened with Berserk with a bunch of other spin-off stuff that tries to replicate it. But it would be really cool to get like a different studios trying to adapt. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but you get the point. Then after the battle, they go back to Midland or the Midland Castle, or I don't know what the terms are, but they go back to the palace basically, and they get like this big grand victory entrance, which it is in 97, but here it's just so much grander, and you spend so much time on it, and you get like Gaston picking up girls on his horse and kissing them, and which is really smooth on him. You know, what a great guy. What a not great, I guess. What a smooth guy. I didn't realize Gaston was so smooth, but then you get women like cheering for Casca, and Casca's blushing, and I don't know, it's a really cute scene. I like that a lot. And then we go to the banquet hall or whatever to celebrate the victory and the knighting of Griffith or whatever, and Farnese is there and Serpico, and I'm like, what the hell? This is crazy. I don't know why they're there. I don't remember that from the manga. I'm assuming they're not there. Not the manga, I guess. The manga or 97. But I mean, yeah, I'm assuming they're not there. But that was crazy. Anyway, and I was really excited, I guess I should say. I'm like, hell yeah, Farnese, she's the best. I also have I guess it's a complaint about how they're always saying how muscular Casca is, and she's like, oh, you know, I'm too muscular to be pretty or blah, 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 but she's not muscular. Like, at least, like, in the 97, she's absolutely not. Here, she definitely isn't, unless they're trying to frame her like that in certain scenes where, like, they'll emphasize the muscle that's clearly not there in other scenes. But I don't know. I hate it when they do stuff like that where they're like, "Oh, I'm so muscular," but they're just not drawn that way at all. In the manga, she definitely is. I remember that. Like, there's this one shot like of her back or something, and I'm like, "Wow, that's very muscular." But here, it's definitely not. Anyway, yeah. Then I made this general note. I said, general note. Generally, the 97 show is better in every regard except for action. The movies do feel more cinematic though, and have some interesting and dynamic camera movement and directing choices. However, both of the approaches have their own very distinct tone. The movies feel significantly brighter. So that's what I was saying before about like the very, like when I think of 97, I think of darkness and depression and like dark reds and all that. But when I think of this, I think of like brightness and like a kind of less dark movie in terms of tone as well. But anyway. Yeah, then in the movie we get a scene of basically the Band of the Hawk dancing, and you get Casca and Grutz like spinning around in a circle, and it goes on for so long, and it's great. Like I think they might use low frame rate at some point there, which was fine. It was possible. But it really feels like when they're spinning around and having this like really happy dancing moment, it feels like they're unlocking a core memory or something where like this is a moment that they're going to remember. Both of them will remember forever. I guess ironically, Casca's not going to remember, but it feels like a moment that Guts will remember forever. And it really makes it feel like when Guts does leave, like in the next few scenes, I guess, it feels like a bigger deal than it ever was in the 97 anime, purely because of just how much they enjoyed this scene together. Oh, god damn, my nose is so itchy. I think I'm allergic to something, you know? I don't know. Anyway, then we get the motif of the bird in the sky once again. So when Guts is leaving the Hawks, the bird is flying over. And now that I read that and like think about it, I guess it is just the freedom thing where Guts is the bird and the bird is finally being free or something. But I don't know, something like that. Then why does Griffith see it? I don't know. I guess Griffith is a bird. He is femto or something. Who knows? Then I just said, oh, no bonfire of dream scene. That's sad because that speech was really good in 97, but it is what it is. I'm just thinking, like, the old adage or whatever of comparison is the thief of joy. I don't think that's what makes this bad. Like, I when I make all these comparisons and say, oh, it just wasn't as good as 97, I don't think that's the crux of why I think this is like these movies aren't that good. I think just on their own, they're just too fast-paced and just strange things to leave out and stuff like that. I don't think it is really, compared to 97, that they're that bad. But this also is 4 out of 5, so I don't know what I'm complaining about. My next note is about how I feel this every time I either read this part of the story. When I saw it in 97, I feel it here again, but I haven't really said this before, which is that it feels like Casca is the only sane person who's surrounded by a bunch of idiots in her world, basically. And I'm thinking of the scene where Guts and Griffith are about to fight, and everyone's like, oh, you know, they have to do this. This is the honorable way. This is the way the Band of the Hawk runs. And she's basically saying, like, this is dumb. They're going to die. Like, what's the point of this? And yeah, Casca is a king, you know, what a legend. And it feels to me like Vinland Saga tries to do this, where it talks about like, oh, women don't like war because blah, blah, blah. And I never really felt that was very effective the way they did it. But to me, this one scene really feels like it does it a lot better. Where like you got Casca, who is a female warrior, but a female soldier, I guess, but doesn't really. She's not there to be a soldier. She's there for Griffith and there for the relationships that she wants to have, and like she sees the truth here, I guess, which is that like the grand ideals of who you want to be are not as important as like the friends you make along the way or blah blah blah. But yeah, I don't know. Casca legend. Women don't like war makes sense. But I don't know. I also another like general note here, which is that these movies, I don't know why this is the case. Like I couldn't justify it when I was watching this, but it feels like Griffith is a husk in this movie. In these movies, he doesn't feel like the Griffith I remember from the manga or the Griffith that I remember from '97. He kind of feels like not even a character of Griffith. He just doesn't feel like a big character. Like he doesn't have a big presence. Like when I think of Griffith in these movies, I think of him as a kid. Like I think he's characterized very well as a kid, especially in the next movie as well. And I can see that element of him being a kid when he's older here, like when he's laughing and stuff at some moments. But I also feel like he has his arrogance that is a big part of who he is. But I feel like he's completely missing any of the core of who Griffith is, which is like being ashamed of his how did I even say this? I guess he's ashamed of being human and where he wants to be greater. Like he wants, like a Ciclet would say, he's striving for this toxic masculinity, but he's doing that because he's ashamed of who he is. But yeah, I get none of that when I'm watching this. Like I don't feel any emotions toward Griffith really when I'm watching these movies, which was complete opposite to '97, where I was very invested in Griffith and I thought he was the most interesting character in the entire story. But yeah, anyway. Then Guts and Griffith fight on the hill, and the animation is really cool. Like I'm sure if you've seen the scene, you know what I'm talking about, where they do the fast hit, and you get this like split second shot from Griffith's like from the back of Griffith, and it's like obviously it's a very I would assume it's a very CG shot, like it's completely smooth, really high frame rate, but it looks so cool. Like it's the best visual thing in oh no, I don't know if I'd say it's the best visual thing. It's the best like animated thing. It looks really cool in these movies. But yeah, it's really interesting how it's a mix of like CG and 2D, where some of the shots look 2D and some of them look CG, but that CG shot is just perfect. It's probably the best use of CG I've seen in an action like scene like that. But yeah, what did I write? I said, what a cool idea oh yeah, and then the way they direct it is that they show the fight really quickly in like a few seconds where you see that Guts won. And then after you've got like that tension released, then you go back and break down the fight a bit more slowly. Like I like the way that was done, where you get both the tension of seeing it all play out really quickly and getting a quick resolution, but then again also getting the reward of understanding what happened when you go and revisit. I thought that was a good choice. Then we get the best scene in all these movies, probably the best scene in all of Berserk that I've seen. Maybe the one I like more is the Casca talking about how maybe there's something I have for this man when they're like having sex in '97. I thought that was really great. But the scene with Charlotte and Griffith, which is the background image here, where you got like Griffith coming through the lightning strikes in the background. I thought that was really well done. But yeah, this is the best scene in the movies, and it's it is the best sex scene I've ever seen of anything. I am a big hater of sex scenes. Whenever I see them, I hate them. I'm like, they're long, they're boring. What's the point of this? Why don't we skip it? This one was perfect. I was enthralled the entire time. But let me see what I've got. I guess what's interesting here is that compared to '97, Charlotte is a lot more willing to actually have sex with Griffith here. Like it's obviously still very manipulative and probably rape, but she he backs off at some points and she like goes on to pursue it further. Like she's a lot more willing to have this have sex than '97, which I thought was interesting. Like it's a very big thing to change between versions. But it was interesting nonetheless. But then I wrote a big thing about the sex scene. I said the sex scene itself is great. The directing, the baylet in front of the flames blocking out the sex, the increasingly more intense and faster music. Then the flash of like Griffith gets a bunch of flashes of Guts, and then Griffith's vision gets a lot blurrier as he's thinking more and more about Guts, and he's like getting emotionally lost, and he's not even thinking about Charlotte and what he's doing to her. And this is where the low frame rate is so effective. Like I've just complained so much up till now, but man, is it so great where it's like his vision's getting blurrier, and he like can't think, and he's like starting to like lose starting to disassociate or whatever. But yeah, the low frame rate like perfectly captures that. And yeah, what else have I got? I said an actual good sex scene. Who would have thought it's possible? But here we are. Yeah, I love how long this scene is, I guess, because usually my complaint is, oh, sex scene where it's too long. But this case, it was perfect. And I love it. And then Griffith cries afterwards. Oh, what a sad little boy. But yeah, then I said, overall, this movie was a lot better. There were so many cool directing scenes. Like I think I've talked about a few here. The 100 Men battle was really great. The action there, the dancing scene and the whole, I thought that was amazing. And the sex scene is the best thing to ever happen in all of these movies, and maybe all of Berserk. So, yeah, it was great. But apparently I have a few more notes about this movie. I said I always liked that in 97. So basically Griffith has sex with Charlotte, and then he like steps outside and people try and arrest him. And I was just saying how like in 97 I really like how Griffith goes to like get his sword so he can fight, but then he like notices, oh, my sword broke when I was fighting Guts, so he can't fight. But in this version here, he doesn't even go for his sword at all. He's like completely broken by Guts leaving and what he just did with Charlotte. And I like it. Actually, I think I like this better, where he just doesn't even consider fighting because he's just completely out of it. I thought that was really great. And next note, I said, is Pippin voiced by Endeavor from My Hero Academia? Because it sounds like him when he screams. And I said, yes, he is, because I looked it up and it was. Oh, excuse me. But then we actually get some characterization for the King of Midland, where in 97 we got nothing. He was a really good guy who imprisoned Griffith for some reason. We never find out why. In this one we actually get very quick and very subtle and very great, not subtle I guess, but very great characterization, which is him whipping Griffith, and Griffith insinuating that he wants Charlotte all for himself. And that's really all you need, I guess, to understand the king, because that in reality that is what he is. So I thought that was great. Like that's really all you need, a little scene like that. Like I don't know why they didn't include something like that in 97. They easily could have. It could fit easily. But anyway. Then I wrote Puck. Puck was in this. I couldn't believe it. We saw him in like 2 scenes and he looks so good. Like I would love to see an anime with Puck in it, like an anime adaptation of this, but I was so excited to see him. Another difference is that in this version, the torturer is like a weird deformed short like creature. I would assume is a human, but yeah, very different from 97. Like I did really like the torturer in 97. He was like this weird like philosophical guy. Whereas in here, it's like more of a like evil kind of like human who's like torturing people for fun or whatever. But yeah, then the movie's over and we get a really cool trailer for the third movie. Honestly, I didn't watch all of it, but I watched up till they have the Egg of the King. Like it has really loud music and it like comes and zooms in, and then the next one comes in, it zooms in. It just like repeats that. I thought that was really cool. And they do a similar thing to it when it actually does open its mouth in the next movie. But I thought it was actually better in this trailer. But yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, I guess another interesting thing is about how it feels like a very big difference between 97 and this is that we don't get we get very little, if any, I guess, internal monologues in this. Whereas in 97, it feels like all the time we were getting what Guts was thinking. And even sometimes we would get what Griffith was thinking. What Griffith was thinking. Whereas in this, I can only think of one time where we were getting an internal monologue, which was during the fight with Guts and Griffith, when Guts is leaving. We get like a very brief insight into what Griffith's thinking there. But other than that, it's very like limited, which I think hurts the movie quite a little bit because it feels like the characters aren't that deep. Yeah, I don't know. Then I said that this movie feels a lot better split into like very distinct parts, whereas the first movie like didn't feel like that. It felt like a little bit of a continuous story. This one I like how it was split. Like you had Guts and Casca alone with the 100 Men. Then you had the fight, the battle for Doldrey, the fight there. Then you had the returning to the palace bit, and then you had the Guts leaving bit. So it was really well structured. I like this movie. Probably the best of the 3. Like the Eclipse stuff in the next movie is great, but I think overall this movie was a very solid, like the best of the 3. Next up, Berserk, the Golden Age Arc 3, The Advent, 2013. So yeah, this was an hour and 47 minutes, and I watched it on the 29th of March, so a few days after the last one, sorry. And this was 4 out of 5 as well. I thought this was great. The first movie, weak. I'd say it's like fine. Like it's not even good, it's just fine. The second movie, I thought it was great. Really good. This third movie, I think generally it's really good. But I would say the Eclipse stuff is like the highlight of this, and it's really well done, which is why it gets a 4 out of 5. But yeah, so point 1 here. Yeah, the movie opens with a flashback to while Griffith like is in prison, he's like hallucinating or whatever, and we see his like eye like in the little shot, which is always really cool. But we get a flashback of Griffith as a child, and we get like a single tear falling down or like a single drop of water or something. But yeah, that was really cool directing. And apparently this is the scene where Griffith sees the bird in the sky, which is just like the birds that Guts saw initially, and again Guts saw when he was leaving the Hawk. So I don't know what the symbolism there is, but apparently there is something. It was also interesting to see how much, like when Griffith is being confined in the cell, he gets like a vision of the God Hand and the Eclipse, and he even sees Skull Knight at one point. It's just interesting to see how much he saw there, and like why include that in the story, I wonder. Like I'm sure it was like that in the manga too. 97 was a bit more subtle, like you can kind of see like some shapes of the God Hand, but you don't really see them. But yeah, I wonder why do this, you know? What does it imply? What does it do to Griffith? Is it meant to like make him doubt himself or something, like he's going to hell or something? I don't know what it is. Oh, and also in that scene we hear Void's voice, which I believe it's the same voice actor. It sounded very similar, which I love the voice actor in 97, and I loved it here. But I think it's even better here, because they do this really cool voice modulation for him, where it feels like he's like not a robot, but yeah, kind of like a robot, I guess. It's really, he feels like an authority more here. I really like the voice modulation. And I wanted to check like if it was a dub thing, so I watched and listened to the sub, and the sub also does the voice modulation, so it's kind of cool. Yeah, then I had one complaint here, which is that obviously in the cell, the torturer accidentally gets rid of the Egg of the King, the Crimson Bailet. And the thing is that later on in the movie, like a little bit later after he drops it, we see the river and the egg. Oh, I guess I don't know if it's the same like river where he ends up at the end, but we see the egg basically in water, and it like, reminds us that it's still there, which I don't like that at all. Like, I wonder if the manga does that. I know in 97 they don't do it, but I wonder if the manga does it. Because to me it feels like when like the egg gets thrown and it gets lost, and personally I just forget about it when I'm like watching through the story. And when Griffith picks it up, like in the water, it's like that's meant to be the shocking moment. Like that's the moment where you're meant to be like, oh, like I forgot about this thing. And I guess fate really is like set in stone. Like to me, that's like the payoff to the Bailet disappearing. So it was interesting that they don't do that here, where you're always meant to keep it in the back of your mind because they remind you that this thing does exist. So it's not as much of a shock when Griffith finally picks it up, like at the end. Whereas I really love that shock, so I wish they didn't include that scene here. But yeah, so. Then I have another question, which is, why hasn't Berserk been adapted into good quality, or good animation quality, I guess? So we have 97, which is like good in terms of art and directing and all that, but the animation is pretty bad. Pretty limited animation, I would say. There are some Sakuga, but mostly it's pretty bad. Then you got these movies, which just CGI and like half the time look terrible and half the time look pretty good. And then apparently there's like a 2016 anime which everyone says looks really bad, and from what I've seen also looks really bad. So I just don't understand why does Berserk get all of these bad looking adaptations where like the content they're covering, especially in these this like Golden Age arc, it's like not any harder than any other shonen anime that I've seen, and all of those shonen animes look great, like look way better than say 97 in terms of animation. In terms of like directing and stuff, this probably looks better, but I just don't understand why it hasn't had a good adaptation yet. But yeah, like surely there's like some passionate like high up in the like anime industry in Japan who's like passionate about doing this, and surely they could push for it, but I guess no one has for some reason. Like maybe the people who own the rights to this just like I would say they just want to make money and make it as cheap as possible, but like they um I don't think there's much like Berserk merchandise or like any other avenues for money, so I don't know why they like it doesn't feel like a cash grab. Like I don't, it's something weird basically is my conclusion here. Um then I got really excited because there's this one apostle which was like I don't remember who he, like Rakshas or something, some like dark shadow apostle who like shows up when Ganishka and Femto are meeting and all that. I think it's really cool in the manga from what I remember. But I thought he showed up here because it was this shadow that was attacking and killing everyone. But it turns out it was just Salat, which is, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is one of the Kushan people, I think. And it's really cool, animated and everything. But like, why is he in this? He's in here for like 2 seconds. He fights Guts and like runs away. Like why are we like skipping over all of this like important character stuff and for the sake of pacing or whatever, but to quickly cover everything, but we're including scenes like this which are like completely irrelevant and I don't know why it's here. But I don't know, it's a weird thought. Yeah, and then what else is really interesting is that the movie completely skips over Guts alone. Like maybe the manga also does this, but in 97 we definitely see a bit of him alone and like show that he has spent time like trying to develop himself and has made friends with like the old man and Erika I think was her name. Whereas in this we don't see them at all, so it feels like Guts like hasn't really grown as a person or anything. Like he disappeared and now immediately he's back, and it's like a very similar pacing issue to how the first movie like ruined this entire thing by having you skip all of that initial Guts characterization with the Hawks and like learning to slowly love them. And here again it feels like you've lost any growth by Guts by going on his own, because it just immediately comes back and feels like the same person. So, and yeah, I don't know, so weird. There's a lot of weird things like that where I'm like, the movie has such good directing at times, but somehow the cohesive, like the overarching story, whoever's job it is like to pace it and like choose what's important and not, feels like they've messed up for some reason. So I don't know why. But yeah, we don't see him alone. Excuse me. Yeah, and I wrote that I think a good way to describe these movies is emotionless, where it feels like I haven't, like, there's only been like 2 times where I felt any emotions or anything. Whereas in 97, it would happen all the time, especially basically every time Guts' theme plays, I get like really emotional, like, oh. But here it hasn't happened at all, where like there are 2 exceptions I wrote, which is Adonis's death. I thought that was pretty effective, where he's like breathing nonstop for like 20 seconds. And Charlotte's sex scene. I thought that was, it is very like, you get into Griffith's headspace there where it's like he feels really depressed and confused and just out of it and like dissociating. I thought that was really like emotionally affecting. But other than that, there's like nothing in these. And I guess also the when Casca and Guts are like spinning in a circle. But 3 things out of like 3 movies is just not much at all compared to 97, where it felt like every other scene it would happen. But yeah, it feels like, yeah, all the emotion feels like it's missing because they just skipped over all the important character, not the important character stuff, but all of the time you have to spend with characters to feel like their connections are genuine. And it feels like a lot of that genuine like connection is missing because of that, which is such a shame. But there are scenes that are obviously way better in these movies, but it's a cohesive thing. It's just not comparable at all. Yeah, so this is me when I'm writing these notes, I'm starting to get like depressed. I'm like, oh, come on, these could have been so great, but they're not. But still 4 out of 5. Then I said, Jesus, it's crazy how long and bad this Guts and Casca sex scene is compared to the Griffith and Charlotte one. So yeah, this was just a terrible sex scene, which is funny because it was probably the best scene in the 97 version, with Casca's speech and monologue about who she is and what she's always wanted, but now she feels like she belongs and she has a purpose and all that. And she can do something for Guts, whereas here it's just like a bunch of thrusting and like I don't know, I just didn't, it was so boring. It went on for so long, and it's just funny because they can do a really good sex scene because they did the best sex scene of all time with the Charlotte stuff in the last movie. So I don't know what happened here, but anyway. Then Skull Knight shows up. That was awesome. I completely forgot about him because in 97 he doesn't show up at all. I love him in the manga, like the scene of him with his Bailiff's sword going down to strike Ganishka, and you see Femto like show up. It's like the greatest. Not whatever. Femto's involved there. It's like the greatest panel in the entire manga. But yeah, he shows up, and I'm like, oh, cool. And he has a voice, which for some reason, when I was reading the manga, I just never pictured him with a voice. But whatever it is here, I thought it fit. So well done. Um, but yes, Skull Knight calling Guts consistently, like calling him a struggler, is really cool, and it kind of implies that he is a struggler too. And it to me, it's as soon as I heard that, it kind of reminded me of the meme like Kai Entertainment talking point about the moral of every story, and especially Berserk, is that you struggle, bad things happen, but you keep going and things will get better. And it kind of, that's basically what Skull Knight is telling him, to like be a struggler and keep struggling. And as long as you struggle, you can get through the eclipse, you can keep living. It's just really is interesting. Yeah. Then they go and save Griffith from the torture place, and the note I've got here is about how when Guts is angry and he like goes to run up the stairs and kill all those people, it's got way better energy compared to 97, where it's just fast paced and he seems genuinely really angry, whereas in 97 it's a bit less like it's a bit slow paced, not as intense. But I think they did a good job here. Yeah, then you know, we get a bit of a time, well, not, we don't get a bit of a time skip, but my notes skip around here, which is that we get the scene where Gaston, that's his name, and all the men go up to Guts and they're like, oh, Commander, don't leave us, we want to come with you, blah blah blah. In 97, this feels like a very profound moment for Guts, where like Guts' theme starts playing, and it's like Guts has finally realized his purpose, and how he's always had these men all along, and he should have just been happy and not tried to pursue this nonsense of a dream or whatever. Whereas here, it feels like Guts is, it's not like it doesn't feel like a big character moment for Guts. It just feels like Guts finally has like a joyous like moment with his friends, and it's like he has a direction now for the future. So it doesn't feel as profound here, which is a shame. Or I guess it's not really a shame. It's a different take on the scene, I guess. But you know, as always, I prefer the 97 version. Griffith so Griffith has his famous scene where it's like, did he rape Casca? Did he not? Or did he try to rape Casca or not? But he falls on Casca basically when he's like she's bandaging him up. And I think it's done way better here in this movie, where it's just sad, where he's on top of her, and like there's this like sad strumming guitar music, and it's like, oh, this what has happened to Griffith here. And like Casca is suffering. It's really sad, and the voice acting's great. What a scene. And a very minor thing, but when Griffith is like running away with the carriage, you get this matched shot of his like what do you even call this? The streets of like the palace that he grew, not palace, but like that city he grew up in, and you get a matched shot of like the cart like speeding through there as well. I thought that was really well done. Like tying in his backstory with what's happening now, really cool. If that is his backstory, I honestly don't even know if I should believe if like that's a true thing, or if it's just like a visual metaphor for Griffith and his dreams as a kid. But anyway, yeah, one other complaint. I guess I got too many. I hate complaining about things. Very minor complaint, which is that we can see too far into Griffith's helmet. So clearly he's being tortured, and it's meant to be so bad that Guts is like, don't look, this isn't Griffith, it can't be him. And he doesn't want Casca to see the face because it'll like ruin him forever, like his or her impression of him. But here we can see into his face. He just looks fine. He looks a bit like dehydrated or something. So I wish they'd made it a bit darker or something. I don't know. Now we have a big paragraph here. So what did I write? Oh yeah. So I said I love the time alone with Griffith in the water with the pointy rock. So you know when he's crashed the cart and he like is going to kill himself or whatever. I really love just how much time we spend there. Like it feels like it feels like we're there for a while, and it's just really quiet. I like how he splashes the water with his hands because he doesn't know what to do. He's like reaching absolute rock bottom here, basically. But yeah, it's also interesting how, like I said before, with the differences in Griffith and how it feels like we don't really understand. Like, when you're watching this, you don't get a full picture of who he is, and you only get the arrogance and stuff. You don't get like the whole depth to him, I guess, in my opinion. But yeah, it's interesting how without a lot of this introspection and depth to Griffith, at this point, due to the rush story, I guess, it feels like a very different moment compared to the manga in 97, where it feels like at this point, what you're seeing is a man who's like big ambitions and ego who have crumbled, basically, and he's depressed in this moment. Whereas in 97, it feels more like he's hysterical, where like he's beyond depression at this point. He's like he almost lost his sanity basically. Like it feels like two very different scenes, but I kind of like them both. Um, yeah, I don't even know which one I was trying to think. Maybe I do honestly like this movie version better. Where, um, no, you know what? No, I enjoy the hysteria of the '97, but I enjoy just how much time we spend like wallowing in his depression when he is like splashing the water and stuff in these movies. I thought that was really cool. All right. Then we get the Baylet activating, and it creates like it has a really digital kind of sound. And a lot of the Eclipse things and Void and like stuff, they all have digital sounds, which is really cool. And it kind of feels like Chainsaw Man did this at some points, but it kind of feels like that music is breaking reality or the simulation. And it's kind of like the Eclipse is um, it's like not of this world. Like it's breaking through everything, the way you see the world, and presenting you with some other projection of it. Like I really like the digital sound effects, basically, digital music kind of sounding things. Um, then a lore thing is about how it's interesting when the apostles are chanting. They talk about how, oh, the eclipse every 216 years. It's just interesting to think about how we're seeing Griffith now. We've got all the God Hands in the past, but it's interesting how in 216 years there's going to be another Griffith. Um, it's weird because Griffith is such a like distinct character in my mind. Like he's such a unique person in this world of Berserk. And it's interesting how in another 2 centuries there will be another person, not necessarily like him at all, but there will be another unique person like this. Like I just love it. It's so tantalizing. Like it's a tantalizing piece of information. Like I wonder what that person's going to be like. Um, yeah, and it also, like I've said this in my '97 discussion, but I also wonder like what were the past God Hand members like as humans? Like what was Void like? Um, it's just so interesting. The lore of Berserk is so interesting. Okay, anyway. Um, then Lady Slan, she shows up. She's naked fully. Way more naked than in '97, and you have all these apostles like falling down, and they're all like chanting her name, and it's like she's an idol or something, like a pop star basically. I thought that was really funny and great. Oh, and this was I should have said this earlier, but in '97, toward the end of the story, you see like this. You see the cat, not the count, whatever he is, the lizard guy, basically, the lizard snake guy. In the background, and this is like meant to be a hint of like, oh, the more supernatural stuff is coming. Whereas in this, you get like a giant, like lady-looking thing. I don't even know what it is, but I thought that was an interesting change. Like, I wonder what the manga does. Like, does the manga include both? I know there's like Wild or something, I think, at some point. But yeah, I couldn't recognize this. Like, it didn't look like the Count, or it didn't look like Rosine or anything. Like, I didn't recognize what this was. So I wonder if it is something I meant to recognize or not. But anyway. Then we get back to the Eclipse. We get all the God Hand entrances. They're really cool. I loved Conrad. I think it was Conrad. His entrance, where because obviously every time we see him, his mouth is like it's like he's screaming. But I thought that was just like a character design thing. But it was really cool when he shows up here. His voice is like booming, and it's like deafening everyone and like shaking the entire world. And it's like, whoa, this is Conrad. This guy, holy camoly, what a guy. And then I got real mad. I'm real disappointed. And if you're a Berserk fan, I hope you know why. Which is that I don't know what stupidity entered their mind for them to leave out the Void Eclipse shot, which is when in the manga in the '97, it's just the greatest thing in all of Berserk, probably the best. I was gonna say the best image, but I know there's a lot of good images in Berserk. I don't want to hyperbolize or whatever, but jeez, okay, I'm just having a mental breakdown of how they left this out. But Void, his head appears from the eclipse, so it's like dark, and it's like, oh my god. Sorry, I'm hitting my desk out of like frustration. But in this, they don't have that at all. He doesn't appear from the eclipse. He just forms out of clouds, and he's like next to the eclipse. And I'm like, how did they miss this? Like they ruined the entire point of this, and it's meant to like show how like important Void is. And it's like, whoa, who is this guy who was important enough to be the focal point of the eclipse and to come out of the eclipse itself? And here it's just like he just forms out of nowhere, and I'm like really, how did like you had one thing, like why would you even leave it out? All you have to do is like move the camera slightly to the left, and he would be covering the eclipse, and you get the same point across. But I don't know why they wouldn't. But like an oversight like that is like, I don't know what was going through. Like this, there must have been scheduling issues. Like this must have been extremely low budget, low timelines, like something. I don't know what it is for them to miss out that one shot. So I don't know. They should be ashamed of themselves for leaving that out. But yeah, I'm kind of memeing, but it is very frustrating that they would leave something out like that. Anyway, moving on. More general point about how Void, like, he's a very interesting character. He doesn't do much, but he obviously has a big ego, and he is self-important. Like he is the representation of the God Hand. He's the head of them or whatever. So we got some police outside or something. But then we got Griffith, who is obviously also very like ego driven and a very big personality. Not a big person, a very, very defined personality. So it'd be really interesting to see those two interact. Like, what would they talk about? Like, who is higher in the hierarchy? Does Griffith bow to Void? Do they see themselves as equals? Like, it would be really interesting to see. Like, who of them, when they were humans, who was smarter? Like, who was more capable? Who had the bigger ego? It would be interesting to see them, like, compared like that, Anyway. Then I just talk about how great the portrayal of Kid Griffith is. I've said that a few times now. It gives him a very strong characterization. He was the child who was always looking up to the castle, wondering what it would be like to live that life. Yeah, I think these movies nail the child Griffith. But I've already said that a million times. The shot of Void lifting up his arm slowly, and the brand of sacrifice showing up. I thought that was really cool. That was a candidate for this background shot. But we'll talk about this shot later. But that was really cool. Then we cut to outside of the eclipse, and we see Rickert seeing like the storm that the eclipse is causing, and I thought that was really like so atmospheric, and it looked really cool as well. Then we get Zod versus Gazeric. Oh, sorry, not Gazeric. Well, I guess it is Gazeric, but Skull Knight. So cool. Those two. Like, this is all new stuff. This wasn't in 97, so I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I remember this from the manga so long ago. I'm so cool seeing it. We go back to the eclipse, and we see the thing that killed Judo, as that great Kai Entertainment video talks about. I think it's done really cool here, where it's like twitching around, which is like perfect for the kind of like whips it has. So I thought that was really cool idea here. Something you can only really do in CGI. It looked great. Then we get the scene of Griffith falling during the eclipse, like metaphorically falling, I was going to make some joke about it, don't worry. Go watch Kyle Entertainment's video about Griffith. But yeah, I'd heard about this scene. Kyle Entertainment jerks this scene off so much. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen. But I thought this was really great. Like, we get, I don't even know, I've just listed a bunch of stuff here that I love about this. But yeah, you get chanting, you get a few different things where, like, you're seeing Griffith see some things from his personal history, it seems like, where you're seeing, like, his men die around him and all that. You see some things that are more ancient history, where you got, like, a burning of what looks like the Library of Alexandria or whatever. Like, you've got, like, weird, like, historical things like that, where it's, like, you're seeing Griffith's personal history, you're seeing ancient history, but it also seems like you're seeing human or, like, evolution history, where you have, like, these cavemen with cave paintings, like, killing each other. And it's, like, really abstract and really interesting. You also see a zygote, like, I've just listed about it. You see a zygote during mitosis, where, like, a human is being born. Like, you see the replication there was really cool. You see a shot of Guts, where Griffith is, like, looking at him, but it looks like a mixture of Guts and Gambino, where that must be intentional. Like, I wonder if anyone else picked that up, but, like, clearly it's shadowed enough, and the shape is a bit narrower than Guts' head would be, and it kind of looks like Gambino, where I'm like, oh wow, interesting how Griffith is seeing it like this at this point. Anyway, we get a bunch of weird, like, disconnected memories of things that we don't really know what they are, which is really cool, where it's like there is no cohesion to this. Like, Griffith is becoming, he's starting to understand the universe, I guess, and he's seeing all these weird things that we as the audience don't understand. And of course, the animation is great, the music is great, the directing is great, the everything is great in this. This is a great sequence. It's not quite as good as the Charlotte sex scene, but it's still really great. Then my next point is about how I'd heard Kyle Entertainment talk about how this has the same energy, or I guess this came first, but has the same energy as the Eren in Path scene, which is an Attack on Titan scene. I won't spoil too much, but Yeah, it is really interesting. That I feel like it would have to be inspired by this because even this, it's using a very same instrument, like like, I don't know what you call it, but some string instrument is used in both. They sound so eerily similar. Um, but yeah, this was this is a great scene. Um, and then it ends with a shot in space where it's so cool. It's always so cool to see it in stories which take place such on the micro level where you zoom out and you see the bigger picture. So you're seeing you're seeing the planet and the sun, and then you zoom out more and you see galaxies, and then you see like superclusters or whatever. And it's what's really cool is how the music is really intense and like scary during this vision, but as you're zooming out to see the galaxy, it gets quieter and more like tranquil and more graceful, and it's like showing the insignificance of everything that is going on Earth, and how everything, like all these things of human history and his own personal history and humanity and evolution and all that Griffith is seeing is all such a tiny part of this entire grand universe and grand story, and um, how like this is what this tranquility and grandness and stuff is what Griffith is really striving for. Like he says, like that's right. This is why I will, and to me that kind of feels like Griffith is striving for a world that is more either more thinks about the bigger picture, but also is perhaps more peaceful and more like less worrying about all these conflicts and stuff in the world, and trying to create something more on a I don't know how to express it, but like be more like the grander universe than be more like the petty human conflicts, you know. And it really gets that point across to me. But yeah, this was I love this scene. I've already rewatched it a few times. Really abstract, really cool. Yeah, and always is something new to see when you watch it. Anyway, almost done through this movie. Oh, I really hope I'm recording. Okay, it's always the most terrifying thing. Anyway, so I never realized that Guts notices and focus on Gaston's. Oh, that's what it is. So yeah, what happens is that they're in the eclipse, and Guts doesn't know his men have died, but he falls into this pool of blood, and he looks around, and the first person he sees dead is Gaston. And I've always wondered, like, why does Guts care about Gaston at this moment? Like, why is Gaston the like representation of all the men here? Like, why not Pippin or even Caucus, or like someone who we've seen interact with Guts a lot more? But I just realized when I saw it here, which is that it's because Gaston is the guy, the one of the men, or the man who approached Guts when all the men wanted to leave with Guts. Like in that scene before where he's like, "You're not going to leave us again, Commander. We're going to come with you. There's nothing you can say." That was Gaston there. So like, it's really cool to see Guts like think of him as the one who like is the most important in this moment, because it's like, man, that was the guy who like showed me that I had what I wanted all along, and it's even sadder. It was a small detail I never picked up on until now. Then Femto is born, and he yells, and he does like a very human like yell as he's born, like as his mouth is opening, and I didn't like that at all. It makes Femto seem very human, whereas to me Femto is very very not human, I guess, very beyond human. So it would have been interesting to see like a more demonic or like animalistic screech, you know, from Femto being born rather than a very human one. And I did check if it was just a dub or sub thing, and it wasn't. I looked at both, and they both do the same human scream basically. Then we get this shot here, which is when Griffith, when Casca is about to be raped by Griffith, she looks up at him and she sees him like this, which, yeah, as an imagery, it's gross, and like it's very effective at being evocative and all that. But yeah, to me, it's very effective because it reminds me of a very similar shot from when she was being raped the first time as a child. Or about to be, and Griffith comes and saves her, and she's like looking up to him, and here again, but this time he's the one who's going to abuse her, but she still sees him that way. It's so effective, and that's why I chose this shot here for this background here, because it's probably the most impactful shot in this whole eclipse section. But yeah, then I really like how so we've had a few sex scenes here. We've had Charlotte and Griffith, which was very artistic, and it's the best scene ever. Then we get the like Guts and Casca, which was pretty terrible because it was very long. And then here we get one that is very long and very bland, which I really like. Like there's nothing artistic about what Griffith is doing here. Like it's not like portrayed in some like some artistic way where you're meant to be like, oh, this looks so cool or anything. It's Griffith just thrusting nonstop, or Femto, I guess here. and it's just like bland. And it's like, man, this is terrible what he's doing. Like, there's no enjoyment. There's not like it's not fun to look at or anything. It's just it's terrible, and great because of that. But yeah. But then we get beyond what 97 covers, which is Guts like loses his eye and he yells out Griffith, and that's where like 97 ends. Whereas here, I completely forgot about this, but Guts goes and runs and charges him and tries to attack him, but Griffith like Femto, I keep calling him Griffith, but Femto stops him and like hovers him in the air, and like there's like an invisible barrier that Guts can't get through. So when I talked about 97 last month, I talked about how when I got to the end, I didn't feel like I hated Griffith. Like I just felt sad that his life had led to this. But now I remember why I hated Griffith, which is that, it is interesting. Like, it's a very, like the visceral hatred towards Griffith is because it's completely unfair. Like he's achieved godhood. He's abusing his godhood, and there's no way to fight back. Like this barrier is just completely unfair and frustrating. And it's like Guts can't do anything. Casca can't do anything. It's like seeing his god powers that make me hate him. You know, like he has achieved what he wanted to achieve, and he is able to do whatever he wants now. Like there wasn't like when 97 ends, it kind of feels like a maybe Guts will attack Griffith here. Like maybe he will do it and he will fail on his own right, and he just wasn't good enough to save Casca. Whereas here it's like he can't save Casca because it's just unfair. He's fighting a god. There's nothing he can do. And it's just it like pisses me off, you know. Like, man, I hate Femto. He's just not playing by the rules. I don't know. It's interesting. Like obviously there's the other level of like the rape itself of Casca is like is terrible, but you don't feel the ramifications of that until you see how it affects Casca later. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But then Guts' scream as he like is basically lost here is perfect. Like it's not like a full rageful scream or anything. It's like a mix of both rage and sadness and loss and everything. And he feels like he's completely lost basically. It's great. Then Berserk comes in and he goes straight for Void. He doesn't waste any time. He goes straight at him. He like attacks him, and he knows that Void's gonna like deflect it, so he like puts up his shield as well. It's so cool. I think I can vaguely remember that from the manga. And I like how he immediately goes for Void, but he only tries once on Void, and then he's like, "I'm out of here." And he goes and he's like, "This is a lost cause. Let me just go and save everyone now." So he just moves straight on, which was great. And then Griffith, like at the end of his like transformation or whatever, not the end of the transformation. I think it's like way after with when he's like done here basically. He says, "This is the last tear I will ever shed." Actually, it's like we see another transformation scene actually at the end, I think. But yeah, what I just wrote here is that this is definitely coming back. Like when the manga ends, it'll definitely end with Griffith like shedding one more tear or something. But yeah, it was really interesting. Then we end with a post-credit scene of Black Swordsman Guts and like this text saying, "This is only the beginning," which is funny because it definitely wasn't the beginning. That's when there were no more movies. This was over. So it was pretty funny. Unless like that was like a promo for the 2016 anime. I think it was 2016. But that's pretty funny if that's the case. Yeah, so I guess now the question is, having seen all these movies that were generally, the first one was pretty bad, but it was fine. Second one was great. This one was... yeah, the beginning was pretty good, but the rest of it was great. But the question now is, do I watch the 2016 anime? Do I reread the manga? Is there anything else I should look at? Like, I got no idea, but I love Berserk. I'm happy. Like, I'm not burnt out of it, yet. Like, I'll watch a bunch of versions of this. I'll go watch some reaction videos or something. I don't know. But yeah. But now, that's it. Berserk. So next up, Algorithms to Live By, which is a book. It took, I listened to the audiobook, so it took me, it's technically 12 hours, but I listen on either 1.5 or 2 times speed, depending on it, on what time it is, I guess. And this took me from the 13th of March to the 29th of March. Actually, I don't know if I said the full title. Algorithms to Live By, the Computer Science of Human Decisions. So I was listening to a bunch of Destiny videos, and at some point they talk about like philosophy or something, and I was like, I'm playing Minecraft right now. and I'm listening to Destiny. Why don't I, instead of listening to Destiny, why don't I like listen to an audiobook like about philosophy or something? And then I looked it up, and a bunch of people were like, philosophy is kind of boring. All the books are like, you have to like think about them deeply or whatever. So then I was like, you know what? Why don't I look up a computer science book? You know, because I am a computer scientist. And everyone recommended this book. I basically needed something where I could like play Minecraft, but in the background, like listen to something and not have to think too deeply about it. But yeah, I tried this out. And this was pretty bad. It was fine. Like it just wasn't for me, I guess. Like the intended audience for this would probably be people who, it's more of a general kind of book rather than like a very computer science heavy book, I would say. Like it feels very like a good way to prepare to start a course at uni for computer science or something. And I don't know, it was interesting. Generally, the concept is it'll go over a bunch of like computer science. I don't even know how to say this, like approaches or problems like sorting or compression or like things like that. But it'll frame it in a way that can appeal to your everyday life so that you understand it a bit better, or understand the rationale for it. And it talks about the history of certain things like that. And it was somewhat interesting. But generally, the reason I gave it a 2 out of 5 is that I just wasn't looking forward to listening to it. Like it started off really good, probably like a 3 out of 5. Really good. I'd say it was sort of good. It's probably more accurate. But then I kind of like got a bit bored of it. And by the end of it, the only reason I kept reading beyond, say, the 8-hour mark was so that I could actually put it on my list and talk about it here and be done with it. So yeah, the first negative review I've got out of everything so far. I guess I have a few things to talk about that were brought up here. The first one is really interesting, which is the secretary problem. So I've written up an example here. Let me drink some water. So you want to hire someone, so you interview people one by one. And at the end of each interview, you have to choose to either hire the person or to permanently reject that person. So by hiring that, if you choose to hire that person, you might be losing the chance to hire someone better who would come on down the line. But if you reject that person, then you might be rejecting the best person you will ever see, basically. And like when they're gone, they're gone. They're not coming back. And you can only hire one person because you only want one secretary. So what do? You know, like how many people do you look at? Like what decisions do you make? But basically there's a mathematical proof that the optimal solution, if you have no other information, if the situation is exactly as I described, the optimal solution is the 37% rule, which is basically if you follow this rule, you will have a 37% chance of choosing the best candidate, regardless of how many there are. So if there are 1 billion people, if you follow this rule, you'll have a 37% chance of choosing the best candidate possible, which is really interesting. But I don't know the proof. I tried to look it up, but the proof was like confusing. You need combinatorics, basically. I don't know, the big probability thing, but Jesus. The rule itself is that you basically look at the first 37% of candidates and keep track of who the best candidate is so far. So you will go through basically the first 37% and reject them all. But you will keep in mind who the best person is throughout this entire time. Then after you've seen those first 37%, you then pounce on the next candidate who's better than the best person in that first 37%, and you hire them immediately. So I don't know, it's really interesting. And I wrote like this situation can apply to many things. So for instance, choosing relationships. So if you assume that you'll live till 80, then you should be exploring relationships until 30 and then pouncing on the next person who is the best compared to all the ones you've seen so far. If you're looking for a house to rent, you would say you have a period of a month where you want to spend looking for a house. Then you would spend the first, say, 11 days exploring and rejecting all of these apartments until you find one. Until after that, then you choose the best house that is better than the best you've seen so far. But it's really interesting. You don't really need the proof for this. All you need to do is like keep it in mind. If you know that it's optimal, then it could be really useful to come in handy at some point. Anyway, then there's like an addendum to this, which is that, however, if you have perfect information, so for example, a measure of the typing speed of this secretary of all the people you're hiring, then you have a 58% chance of choosing the best person if you do the following, which is be more choosy the more applicants are left. So for instance, if there's only one candidate left, then you would have to choose them, right? Because there's only one candidate left in the people you're hiring. If there's 2 candidates left, then you would choose them if they're better than the 50 percentile. So if they're better than the 50% of the people so far who are in the upper 50%, basically, that you've seen. If there's 3 left, then you would choose the third last person if they're above the 69 percentile. And you basically continue that pattern up. And if you do that, you'll have a 58% chance of choosing the best candidate. Sorry, when I say 50th percentile, what I mean is like for the typing speed in this case, but I don't know. It's confusing, but yeah, the 58%, if you followed this rule, basically. Look it up. It's the secretary problem, 58% rule. So if I haven't explained it well, just look that up. And the one important thing to keep in mind is that you never hire someone who isn't the best you've seen so far. But anyway. Next point is, I said I could imagine someone reading this as a year 12 student and then deciding to do computer science. So it feels like a very like inspirational kind of book where you see like all these areas of life that computer science kind of applies to. So it'd be really interesting. And they also mention how is an anecdote they talk about here, which is how at one point Obama, the U.S. president, former U.S. president, went to some like Google conference or something, and he someone asked him about sorting, and he mentioned, oh no, we wouldn't use bubble sort or something. I thought that was the sickest thing ever, and that would win me over as like a voting person if he knew what a bubble sort was. Anyway, excuse me. Another generic thing, I like reveals in writing. So the example I have here is that the book talks about this random sports fan who was annoyed that a person he bet on lost a really early round, so that person didn't get to win a prize, even though the person who came second was way worse than the person who lost, like way early on. Then you get the reveal that this isn't just some random sports fan, but an Oxford math professor who was annoyed by this, so it's implying, oh, he's going to do something about it. But then you later on get another reveal that it's not just some Oxford math professor, but it's the author of Alice in Wonderland, who was also an Oxford math professor, who was also a sports fan who was frustrated by the situation. Now, the point they make, I don't care, but the way they do this reveal, where it's like a multi-stage reveal and you get like context at each point, really cool. Like I'd like to do something like that when I'm writing scripts or something, but anyway. Okay, second last point. Then we get the Copernican principle, which is something they bring up, which is like a heuristic rather than like a mathematical optimal proof or anything. But the idea is that if you want to predict how long something's going to last, and you have no knowledge about it whatsoever, then the best guess you can make is that it will continue on for just as long as it has existed. So, for instance, the example they talk about is that if you see the Berlin Wall 10 years after it was made, then your best guess for how much longer the Berlin Wall will last would be another 10 years. So yeah, like I said, this is a heuristic, not like a mathematical rule. And the intuition behind it is that, this is an example to kind of explain why this is the case. So if you see an object and that object has existed for 1 year so far when you're seeing it, and you know that it's going to exist for 1 billion more years, then it's incredibly unlikely that you're observing it at its first year after creation, right? Like the odds of you seeing this 1 billion-year-old thing right in year 1 is like 1 in 1 billion, right? Or 1 in whatever, way more than 1 billion because it's like 300 days in a year, but actually doesn't make sense at all. 1 year in a year. Anyway, the odds of you seeing it is very unlikely. So the odds of you observing it in the remaining 999 million years is much more likely. So if we're at a random, so assume that we don't know where we are, we're at a random point in this like billion-year lifespan, then there's a 75% chance that we're not in the first quarter. So you could say with a 75% confidence that that object that you were seeing will survive for another 3x years, right? Because of probability, but I don't know. Fun little thing. Keep it in mind. I don't know if you understood a single thing I just said, but type in Copernican principle, Copernican principle, and look it up. I don't know if it's interesting. Then my last thing is about how the final line in the book talks about how, because the whole book is basically talking about like trade-offs and assumptions and all these tricks that algorithms do or computers do to achieve things. And the book basically ends with talking about how, oh, these assumptions and cheap tricks and concessions, they're not just concessions made because we can't be rational. They are what it means to be rational. which is really interesting because it's like, oh, all these algorithms are doing all these simple things, like these cheap things, um, but those cheap things are the optimal things to do. So it's just really interesting. I don't know. I feel like I, I haven't really got a single point across here accurately, but I don't know. It's a fine book. I half paid attention. I think I got at least some interesting things out of it. All right, next up, Before Your Eyes. So this was recommended by Weeaboo Fish in the comments of last month's digest. It's a game. It's an hour and 5 minutes long. No, sorry, an hour and a half long. And I watched it. I played it right before the end of the month, so last night. So anything else I should say? I guess before I reveal any information about this, I'm pretty sure I've seen like I definitely seen a game where you blink your eyes. I've seen PewDiePie play it, part of it. But I don't know anything about it. I didn't know about what the story was. I just seen like this mechanic before. But yeah. So overall, this was a 5 out of 5. This was a fantastic game. An hour and a half long. The general mechanic is that whenever you blink, the story will progress, or like time will pass or something. Which is a really cool mechanic. And it's kind of like whenever you're at a scene, you want to like see longer. You gotta like force yourself to blink, because as soon as you blink, the scene's gone and you're not going back. So really cool. I like the story. The story was really great. So like when I first started this, you immediately feel like you're a kid, whatever, you're seeing your family, and it immediately feels like, okay, so this story is gonna try, like this game's gonna try and get me emotionally, right? Like they're gonna try and make me cry because I'm gonna blink and like everyone's gonna be dead or something. And I thought, okay, there's no way this isn't gonna get me. Like I'm smarter than this game. I'm not gonna get emotionally invested or whatever. But yeah, so I'll say that for now. I guess that's what I initially thought when I was watching, when I started off. But my other initial thoughts is that I personally, I don't know if you've noticed this in this video, but I blink a lot. And I have like a motor tic sometimes where I'll like blink like really intensely or whatever. So this was a bit triggering initially, where I was like, man, I have to like intentionally blink so much to like to progress the story, and I felt kind of like man, this is I don't like doing this manually blinking. But anyway, yeah, general things. The soundtrack is amazing. It sets the pace of the story, where like the faster music will be like more intense scenes, where it's like it'll make you feel like you want to blink a bit more often, so that the story progresses faster. And the slower music will make you want to like take in the scene a bit more and like focus on them and stay at certain scenes. It's a very subtle way of commanding you kind of how fast you should be going through things. Ideally, really interesting idea. Yeah, then the story itself is really interesting. How you've got this mum who's like pushing stuff onto this kid. Like obviously the mum didn't achieve what she wanted to achieve as a musician when she was younger, so now she's like forcing this kid to kind of be to be a musician, and he doesn't really want to, I guess. But yeah, I just hate it. I hate when parents do that. Like I hated this mum basically at the beginning. But boy, oh boy, does it come back in this final scene where she's like talking about how she wanted to fulfill her dreams through this kid. And man, yeah, we'll talk about the scene. But yeah, then midway through the story, or midway through the game, like you've basically gone through the past and experienced part of your life. Then you go to there's this wolf man basically, which is like the narrative through line of this story, which is you're in a boat with a wolf man, and you're slowly going down this canal, and you're gonna when you end up in the final like section, you're gonna end up being judged by this great like gatekeeper or something. So midway through the game, you go back to this wolf man on the boat, like you're back from your life journey or whatever, and you're back on this like afterlife kind of boat thing, and you get to like evaluate what you've seen so far. Like he asks you a bunch of questions and stuff, and you can decide whether you want this or this to be the interpretation of what you saw. And to me, so I decided that I lived a happy upbringing with a mother who was a musician rather than an accountant, and my neighbor wasn't just my like close friend or whatever. They were my first love. Is the decision I chose. So like I wonder like if someone else chose like a different answer, like if he was an accountant or if it wasn't your first love, how that would impact the rest of the story, or if it would have any impact at all. Like I don't think like those decisions impact really how the grander things happen in the story, but I wonder if it would change any subtle things like about what story the mum reads out at the end of the game, or if that makes any difference or anything. But it was interesting. Yeah, then after your life is like done and you go back and you reframe some of the weirder scenes that you saw, like where there was a darkness and you can hear like animals outside, and you see that there's like all the baby cats of your little cat that you grew up with have died and were eaten by wolves or whatever, or coyotes, I don't know. But that was really shocking and affecting, and traumatic, I guess. And I blinked pretty fast, where I was like, oh, I don't want to see this, which is an interesting thing. Then what's really interesting about this like second telling of the same story, which is that initially when you're going through your life, you're meant to care about the kid, like who you. I don't at first. I also don't even see it as me. I see it as like a kid that I'm blinking for. But you're meant to see yourself care about the kid suffering because the people around him are dying. So like his mum is dying. I guess it really is his mum. Whereas like his mum is dying, his dad's getting older, and you're meant to feel bad for him because that's happening. But then the second time around, you don't care. I mean, personally, I didn't care about the kid dying. I cared because of the parents. The parents are suffering, and I feel bad for them because their kid is dying. It's a really interesting reversal where it's like you see both sides of the story here, like a child being suffering because of their parents dying, and then a parent suffering because of their child dying. Really interesting narrative approach, I guess, or like structure to the story. I thought that was really cool. Then they also introduced this new mechanic beyond blinking, which is like you just close your eyes at certain scenes. I thought that was really cool, where it's like you really like get immersed, I guess, in the voice acting and stuff, where it feels like you're there's, say, your parents are like behind a door, and you like close your eyes and you're like listening to them behind the door. Really cool. Love the introduction of that mechanic. It's also, they introduce it right at the end when it's like close your eyes, you know what's gonna happen when you're like passing, like when you're dying basically, and you close your eyes and the credits show up. Oh, it's great. Another cool mechanic was that when you're because the story is basically that you're dying. You're 11 years old and you've got a disease, cancer, whatever. I don't know what it is, but you're basically dying at 11. And when you're getting really sick and tired, this like intense like light will get more intense, and eventually the mouse, which like moves around where you're looking at, it gets slower and it's like harder to move it around. It takes way more energy. You have to like move the mouse so far and so much faster to actually get it to move. It's because you're sick and dying and getting very weak. I thought that was really like engaging, a way to show how sick you are, you know. But this game was absolutely made a 5 out of 5 by the final scene, which is that like I absolutely bawled my eyes out. Like I cried so much. And it's weird in that I don't know why. Like there's usually when I cry for some scenes, I can explain why. Like there's certain scenes in Steins Gate when some things happen, and I'm like, I can explain exactly why I'm crying here. But in this, it's just like the vibes, bro. All right, like I can tell you just general ideas, but basically, so the last scene in this game is the mother of the kid who's reading out this story that she wrote about the kid's life, basically, and she talks about how the kid met the neighbor, who was this sad girl who'd lost her mother, and you made her happier for a bit. And I'm like, oh, this is so sad. And then you see the mum talk about how she like admits how she was pretty bad as growing up, and how she bad as like raising him, because she didn't get to live out her dream and she tried to live it through him, and it's so sad but so honest as well. And I'm crying and I'm blinking, and it's flashing between her telling the story and then the wolf telling the story to the great judgment person in the afterlife, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to blink. But it's just such a cool dynamic. But anyway, what did I write? So you're flashing between the mom's perspective of your life with the wolf guy telling the judgment thing in your fantasy world as you're dying. And right at the end, they're like, why is he smiling? He must be somewhere he likes, which like frames this entire narrative with the wolf as like the fantasy that this dying child has wrapped around the reality to help him cope with dying. And it's really cool how you don't, like when you're listening to this sad story of this dying child, or this mum's perspective of the life of this dying child, it's interesting that because I couldn't speak when I'm crying and blinking and I can't control the flow of the narrative, like the mechanic of blinking moving on the narrative forces you to kind of like suppress the emotions for a bit and try and hide it as much as you can so you don't blink. And it's very unique situations I've never been in before. But yeah, man, very effective. I love this game. I would recommend this to anyone, absolutely. It might not affect you as much as it's affected me when I went through it, but I thought it was fantastic. And just purely for the mechanic of blinking, it's just so cool. So just play it for that reason, even if you just got spoiled in the entire story by me. But Yeah, and I wrote, this is a story that only works because it's a game. It's so sad at the end because you don't want to move on. You don't want to blink, because if you blink, this game is over basically. Like this life, this kid's gonna die. The mum's not gonna tell the story. It only works because it's a game. And I also wrote that it's a perfect credits song. They chose a really good song for it, which is always a good hallmark of something that I like a lot, which is that you get to the end of the story and then you just sit there and like you like close your eyes because it told you to, and you just reflect on the music that's going on, and it's really great. So yeah, this was a 5 out of 5. Love this. Now we get the 2022 ranking so far. So we have a few additions and few changes here. So number 1, Goodbye Eri. Number 2, Chainsaw Man. Number 3, I decided to move Stray up a bit. So it used to be, I think, below Tales of the Jedi and stuff, but I really, on reflection, I like Stray a lot. Like it's especially when I was thinking of Before Your Eyes, I was thinking like, what do I prefer more, Stray or Before Your Eyes? And I realized it was Stray. Like it's stuck with me over these past few months, and it's gotten more fond in my memory over time. So I think I moved that up. Then the Attack on Titan final season part 1, then Before Your Eyes, Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi. Then we get to the 4 out of 5. So Berserk 97, still the best. Then The Last of Us. Then Berserk movie 2, then followed by movie 3. Then Bones and All, My Hero Academia, Glass Onion. Then we get the 3 out of 5, so The Shining, Superliminal, Spy Family. Then the worst of the 3 out of 5s, Berserk, The Golden Age Arc 1. And then we get something that was actually bad, which was 2 out of 5, which was Algorithms to Live By. That's the rankings for 2023 so far. So now some YouTube videos. So first one was just some random video I saw on trending. I'd heard of this name before, Eddie Burback, but I'd never watched the video, but it was on trending. It had Mr. Beast. I always find him interesting, so I decided to watch it. It was a long video, 41 minutes. It honestly didn't feel that long. I wonder if that's inaccurate. I don't know. Okay, so I don't really care about the content of this. Basically, the idea is that he talks about ghost kitchens, which are kitchens that, or like restaurants that don't exist physically, but they do exist on like ordering apps, like on Uber Eats or something. You'll see like a restaurant on there, but the physical location is just like some back there's no storefront basically. It's just like a industrial like kitchen kind of thing, or like you can even have multiple kitchens all in one area, or for multiple different restaurants. But that was the idea. And he talked about he has some morals about how like ghost kitchens are bad because they make small businesses lose customers and health inspections are difficult. I don't care about any of that, but it was mildly interesting. It had some like he's a big YouTuber, so he has all those like big cringe like, oh, I'm a big YouTuber kind of humor, which is always bad. But I have 2 interesting notes, I guess. The first one was about how the concept of ghost kitchens is really interesting, and how like I'd never heard of it, but the idea that in this modern day and age where a lot of people are ordering things, you don't really need a physical store, and you just have like these conglomerations of like restaurants all huddled in one area to make the efficient food creation be more efficient, you know. But the really interesting idea to me was the concept of a virtual restaurant where you've got basically you order through the app for this restaurant, and you go and they have like basically a bunch of lockers for all the food, and when the food's ready they'll like put it in there, so you don't have to talk to anyone. You just pick it up and take it with you. And I've always thought like, why aren't all restaurants like that? Like it's just so much more efficient, so much better. You don't have to talk to anyone. I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. And also while I'm talking about this, I think I've like described ghost kitchens wrong. I think ghost kitchens are when you have like one background company, which is like that thing I was talking about, where you don't have a storefront or anything. You just have a kitchen basically in some like closed off building. And then they provide on the app a bunch of different names for different restaurants, but they all come from the same place. So it's been a while, but I don't really care about that, which is why I got that wrong, I guess. But yeah, the virtual restaurant thing is interesting, where you like pick it up in a little box. Anyway, the other reason I brought this up very briefly to talk about this video was that he does a really cool thing about lying to the audience a few times, which was something I'd like to do in some of my videos. Would be really cool. But one example is that he talks about like, so you got this virtual restaurant, right? Oh, sorry, you got like a virtual restaurant where it's like you have one restaurant or a ghost kitchen or whatever. You got one actual restaurant, but they're branded with a million different names on these apps, right? And he's like, okay, so how many restaurants would be considered a lot? Like, so you have one kitchen. how many storefronts would you consider a lot to come from there? Like 10? If you had 10 different storefronts on the app, which all came from the same place, would that be bad? And he's like, oh, I lied. What about 20? Do you think there's 20 of these apps? Would that be bad? It's like, no, I lied. 30? No, I lied. And then he's like, he talks a bit, and then he's like, 45. That's the real answer. It's like, Jesus, so there were 45 kitchens that all like were presented as different stores in the app that all came from the same place. And it was a great reveal where it's like, when you initially think about it, you're like, yeah, 10 is quite a lot, isn't it? And then he says 20, and you're like, oh, I guess 20, you got me. 20 is pretty good. Then he just keeps going. Anyway. Then he also does like another trick at the end where he talks about the focus group was trying to tell the difference between fast food and chain restaurants or something like that. I don't really remember the details. And he like tricks us, the audience, but he also tricks the people there because they weren't actually discriminating between two fast food restaurants. They were discriminating between two chain restaurants or something. But I don't know, deception, really cool. Yeah, good video. All right, next up is Doomed to be Replaced is AI Art Theft by Solar Sands, a big YouTuber apparently, 34 minutes long. So I sought out this video, and I didn't seek this video specifically, but basically I was looking for to see what actual big YouTubers really thought about AI, you know, because I always see on Twitter like people, most of the people I see will be complaining about how how it's really bad and unethical and bad for artists or anything. So I thought, okay, so if this is such a prevalent idea, like I wonder how these people justify it. Like, what do they think? These big time YouTubers who are influencing all these people. And I found this video, 34 minutes. It had an interesting thumbnail, and I watched it. And so I thought this was generally probably the best opinion piece on this topic I've seen so far. Like he generally does a really good job of describing. Like he's clearly done a lot of research, which is something that is obviously lacking in a lot of this discourse. So, for instance, he describes the technology behind stable diffusion decently well, like to a decent, he doesn't go in depth or anything, but he goes to an appropriate depth to kind of give context to the things he's saying. And he does it's pretty accurate, the stuff he's saying as well, which is good. And it's generally a pretty informative video. Like he talks about one of the main data sets used to train things like stable diffusion, and I didn't know that it wasn't actually a data set, but it was just a link to a bunch of existing images, similar like NFTs and stuff. Apparently, I also don't know that much about NFTs, but that was interesting and insightful. He also like is like very. Essentially, I was like pleasantly surprised to see that someone has actually put time into understanding things. Like he talks about how overfitting, where it's like, you know, AI art can replicate the signature of artists or whatever. He talks about why that happens, and talks about how that's not a feature of these things. It's a bug that can be solved and should be solved, or not a bug, I guess, like an issue. And it's not a feature. Interesting. But generally, I was just pleasantly surprised to see someone actually take the time to look into the AI stuff, you know, the AI aspect, rather than like artists being replaced or whatever. But my takeaway from this video is basically the first like half, maybe a bit over a half, seems very logical, and he explains all this background and stuff, but then it turns into quite a very strong like pro-artist, anti-AI art kind of opinion piece. But he like masks it with a very soft demeanor, so it's not like very as confrontational as the things you see on Twitter, but it's like spouting the exact same like talking points, I guess. But the most compelling argument he makes, I guess, which is also what he says is his like crux of his entire argument here, which is that it's morally wrong for, he also said he can't argue that legal or whatever. The only important thing is the ethics and morality. But he says it's morally wrong for AI to have the capacity to replicate the identity and it's morally wrong for the AI to have the capacity to replicate the identity and style of a given artist for two reasons. The first one is that it can cause confusion as to whether the art is authentic or not, and two, it can disrupt the artist's income. So both of these, I think, are at least somewhat interesting arguments, and probably the ones I would say are the most compelling out of all the ones I've seen, but I do disagree with them very strongly, I would say. But I don't have the voice at the moment or the energy to go into this, but eventually you'll see some scripted video about this that I'll make. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm not going to go there now, but that was, I think that's a pretty fair description of his argument, but you can have a look if you're interested. I'd also recommend this to anyone. It's really informative, I guess. But another thing he talks about is right at the beginning of this video, he talks about how going forward, he's never going to make statements anymore about how AI will never do this or technology will never do this. But then later on, he makes the claim that AI art cannot exist without artists' work, which is completely wrong. So like at the moment, it is true. Like for all of these, well, it's true in the sense that any meaningful art like created by an AI. So things like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, DALL-E, any whatever you want. All those big scale projects, they all rely, they cannot work. By definition, they are trained on the creation of artists. They will not exist without them. But one day there will be technology that doesn't rely on that. If you have an AI that can learn concepts without visual reference, which is entirely possible, then you don't need training by artists, and one day it can happen. But it's just strange how he made that definitive statement. I don't know, I'm just triggered by these little things, But another cool thing he said was he introduced me to haveibeentrained.com, which is a really cool tool. How apparently if you like upload your art to there, or like any art or whatever, it'll show you whether your art is in the training set that is used, like this major training set he talks about, which is used in a variety of different AI art tools. So that was really cool. Check it out, haveibeentrained.com. See if any art you've made is on there. It'd be pretty funny. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this. AI art, big thing. I'm very passionate about it. Obviously, I am a big AI guy, so I'm in support of AI, but one day I'll talk about my passions here. So next up was this was a very random video, which was recommended to me by Jarky Bacon. He wanted me to, he gave this as a potential candidate to include in this digest. So I thought, you know what, someone actually recommended me a YouTube video, I'll watch it. But this is, so Tennis Where Every Point is on a Different Court by Bo Miles, who is an Australian guy. So that was initially off-putting, where I heard this and I'm like, oh god, an Australian. I'm Australian. I don't want to hear Australians. It's always like, whenever I see Australian media, like news or movies made in Australia or whatever, I just, I don't like it, Give me the good American stuff, But yeah, I don't watch videos like this. It was basically a vlog, but with a goal, kind of. It was really interesting. Where the overarching thing here is that you got two guys playing tennis. One is like this Bo Miles guy and his friend, who's like actually good at tennis. But the gimmick is that every time someone scores a point, they move to a different court. And it doesn't mean like a different court in the same like field or anything. It means that they will travel all over Victoria, or Melbourne. I don't know which. It was definitely Melbourne, but I think they like went pretty far, so probably just Victoria, to find a different court and play on that. But yeah, I didn't have a single thing to say. I thought this was a mildly entertaining video. The cool, wholesome concept, I guess. But yeah, beyond that, I don't really have anything. So yeah, thank you, Bacon. Anyone else wants to recommend me YouTube videos, go for it. Maybe I won't have much to say like this, but I mean, go ahead. I'll watch them. Next up was The Great Lie of Yoshida Hirofumi. So I was doing a little bit of research for Yoshida because, who knows, maybe one day I'll have a video about him. But this was the most striking thumbnail made by Hiding in Public. And this was like a theory video about what's going on with Yoshida in Chainsaw Man. So I've only got very few. I thought generally I thought this was pretty good. I'm sure I've probably seen a Hiding in Public video, but I don't remember. Is he the guy who does the Attack on Titan will break you or something? Is that guy? Or I don't know. But first thing is that he misinterprets something pretty big, which is that Kishibe, at the end of the Quan Chi arc, whatever arc that was, the Darkness Devil arc, Kishibe doesn't want to take his mask off when Quan Chi is killed by Makima. And he like makes a big deal about it here. But the reason Kishibe doesn't want to take it off is because he doesn't want to see his friend dead, because obviously he loved Quan Chi and she doesn't want to see him dead, but he doesn't want to see her dead. But this guy makes like a theory about why he's doing it or something. I don't remember, but and that was a bit weird. And he also brings up at some point that Yoshida doesn't fight that something about Yoshida and the Cosmos Fiend, but they never fight and they never interact. So I don't know why he brought it up, but it was like a few weird things like that throughout this video. I wish I'd watched it more recently so I could like comment on it properly, but yeah, a bit weird. But the reason I want to talk about this is because he talks about how the Octopus Devil might not be the Octopus Devil, but the Cthulhu Devil, which is like some like octopus kind of big giant monster scary thing, which is really cool. And the way he like drops the reveal in the video like gave me chills. I was like, oh my god, that's so cool. Maybe Yoshida is the working with the Cthulhu Devil, and that's like a really powerful devil, which explains why he's so like powerful. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that. Cool reveal. Bit of some factual misinformation. No, it's not factual misinformation. People can interpret the Kishibe thing however they want, but I think it's pretty clear, like at least the way I see it. But yeah, and then also it was interesting that when he made this video, he talks about at the end how chapter 117 was the latest chapter. So this was quite a few chapters ago. But we still haven't got much more information about Yoshida. But yeah, anyway. So that was the great lie of Yoshida Hirofumi. Next up, so VinHard. If you're in the Vinland Saga community, if you have read the manga, how you better be watching VinHard videos, right? He's the one of the best Vinland Saga creators. He's like he's an expert. If I would classify anyone as an expert, it would be VinHard here. He understands his characters and stories very well and everything. But I look forward every week. He on every 2 weeks he uploads because the anime is airing at the moment. He uploads like a retrospective on the 2 anime episodes, like kind of like a review, but like talking about the manga comparisons and everything. So I've enjoyed watching those basically. Yeah, so I don't really have much to say. I just enjoy that. But the next one, VinHard, also quite a while ago, and I watched this a while ago, uploaded a new analysis video for 36 minutes. He's a very makes those very chunky analysis videos, you know, with a lot to think about, called Thorkel and the Appeal of War, a Vinland Saga analysis. So I watched this a few months ago. Like I could have included this in, I don't know, it was a few months, but I could have included this in the last digest, but I ran out of time and I didn't have much. I couldn't think about this. There's so much in this basically, but this is basically a video that is a deep dive into masculinity and the pressures of Norse society or Norse culture on men in Vinland Saga. And he talks about basically Thorkel and Thorfinn as very interesting case. He doesn't actually talk about Thorfinn much, but the whole point is about Thorfinn, I guess. Yeah, there's interesting case studies into this. So he makes there's a lot of points in this. I highly recommend this. If you want in-depth Vinland Saga analysis, you will never find it anywhere else better than VinHard videos. All right, so check them out. I love them. I actually haven't even seen all of them. I think there's like one I still haven't seen. So maybe I'll include that next month. But they're great. Yeah, he makes a lot of points, so I'm only briefly going to cover some of the more interesting ones, and I'll probably talk about it very briefly. But the first one is he talks about how, like a talking point I've always heard a lot, and he also says, yeah, it's a talking point that comes up a lot, is that why is the violence in Vinland Saga so fun if the point of the story is to be about how violence is bad? You know, shouldn't Yukimura not be showing us this violence and making it boring or something? But VinHard is like, no, this isn't the case. He doesn't want the story to lie to us. Like, if the story was lying to us about violence not being fun by like hiding the violence and all that, it'd be disingenuous and be kind of makes us less likely to trust the story and what it's telling us and the themes it's conveying about how violence is bad if it's willing to lie to us about the fact that it is actually fun to see. So I thought that was a really interesting counter to that point that I've never seen before, where it's like he doesn't want the story to lie to us. That was really cool. He makes another point about how the Vikings are kind of like what's the term for this? Confirmation bias. I don't know what it is, but basically he talks about how the Vikings excel in the things that they consider righteous. So essentially the Vikings basically categorize things as righteous if they excel at them. So like physical strength and military might. Whereas other forms of power, for instance trickery, are considered unfair and unrighteous by the Vikings. And he also points out how the Jomsvikings present themselves as more righteous and more disciplined and more like physical strength, more military might, but they're just less honest about the violence and thinking that they're so righteous when they're not really, compared to the real regular Vikings who are at least honest about it. So I thought that was another interesting point he made. Then the second last one, he talks about how the Vikings act like children. So I thought this was really interesting, where he talks about how action has a broad innate appeal, where you don't have to grow into understanding action, you're just innately engaged by it. So people will watch an action scene and they'll be immediately engaged, whereas for you have more like a philosophical scene, you'll have to like engage in a different level, right? So he says that you can describe like if violence is so like innate and so like impulsive, then so you could describe a man who like doesn't hold back on these impulses to engage in violence as childish. So he's basically saying the Vikings are childish in the way that they act. So what's so proud about giving in to the appeal of violence if everyone is born into it, and born being engaged by it, I guess. So really interesting. Another interesting point. There's a bunch in this video, but I'm just trying to go through this quickly. then he makes he makes a bunch, but the other final point here I've got is about the Thorkel and Wolf scene, where Thorkel is basically he realizes he's being manipulated by Canute, but he like chokes Wolf and takes control of the situation, and he like cheers, he's like, woohoo, let's go kill people now. But I love that scene. It's like classic Thorkel. But VinHard talks about how this isn't a great scene actually, which I love, and he says how Thorkel choking Wolf doesn't make him stop being manipulated by him. Basically, yeah, he doesn't choke Wolf because he doesn't want to be manipulated by Canute. Thorkel just wants to feel like he isn't being manipulated by Canute. So really, in the end, where he's like cheering or whatever, it's not like a very very exciting moment where it's like Thorkel's broken through. He's his own man, you know. He lives his own way. It's a very pathetic scene where it's like he's just like postured as though he is free, even though he isn't at all, and he's like a big child. I don't know. I thought it was a really interesting take on that scene, which I'd never heard before. But yeah, then the big thing I wanted to talk about is the conclusion to this video. I thought it was really effective. It like gave me chills. I was like, man, this is really good. Well, it's like the music and the way he frames it, but he basically compiles a bunch of examples where the world of Vinland Saga, as well as the narrative, say that the Vikings can't change. Basically, like the Vikings live their Viking lives, and despite any revelations they have at the end, they die Viking deaths, basically. So then surely the same is true of Thorfinn, right? The world is basically shouting at him how he's still the same person inside, and there's no such thing as change for a Viking. But then we, the audience, we know that this isn't true at all. So the way he frames it in the video is just like that. And then when you see Thorfinn and, I don't know, the music playing in the video, it's really effective at showing how the way of the Vikings is so ridiculous, because we know that Thorfinn changes. And we know hence that the Vikings are wrong in their beliefs. I don't know. Maybe I missed the point of this ending, or like the video entirely. I don't know. But to me, it was really good. I liked it. Like my interpretation, I guess. And great. I got chills. Good job, VinHard. What else have I got? He also makes a very minor point about the Vinland. A lot of Vinland characters looking like Super Saiyans, like Thorkel right here looking like a Super Saiyan 2 Trunks or something, or like Ultra Ascended Saiyan or whatever. Funny. And I also wonder, because he brought up like a Palpatine meme at some point, and I was like, I wonder what VinHard thinks about the Star Wars prequels, if you've seen them. Like I wonder, because there is, in my opinion, there is a bit of like subtle depth to those, which I could imagine him picking up on, but at the same time, I could see him being in the complete opposite camp, where like most people, where it's like, oh, these are terrible movies. I don't know. It'd just be interesting to see what he thinks about them, but yeah, I'll probably never know. Okay. Then throughout this month, I also saw a bunch of great, like Destiny has been popping off basically with a bunch of great videos and streams, but I watched a few good ones from the past, so I thought I'd just list some here. Like he had this, went on a podcast called No Jumper, and it was him and Zerka. Zerka's like this troll guy. Apparently Destiny doesn't think he's a troll, but he's obviously a troll. But it was just so funny. Like seeing these two, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but seeing this guy in the middle and Zerka interact, where this guy in the middle doesn't know who Zerka is. It's just so funny. And there's just one line which is just so iconic, where Zerka is like this big, like he basically, we would never be gay, right? And then he reveals, like, he's like, wait, but I would never be gay, but I've had those dreams, bro. And it's just so funny, and I just cracked up so much, because this guy who like just would never be gay or anything, he has gay dreams. I don't know, it was such a funny moment. But yeah, this podcast was great. Then later on in the month, I actually caught the stream when this happened live, but there's Destiny, this random tier 5 sub guy who pays like what, $80, $80 a month or something, to be dragged into stream. Uncle Sam was his name. And you got Zerka, who's this like troll free Masonic literature or something, some crazy guy, basically flat earth, blah, 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 all these conspiracy theories. Then you got Karantos, who's this like new like extremely religious Muslim guy, who's also like insane in his beliefs and stuff. And Destiny basically throws these guys all together, and they're all arguing about like, I don't know, the most like crazy stuff. And it's just so funny, like seeing these three as a dynamic of like the sane, not the probably the most sane, but also like insanely like inability to read the room of like what's going on here, of this guy up here. Then you got Karantos who's just like yelling and like just I don't know. It's just like fighting Zerka on behalf of Uncle Sam, and then you got Zerka who's just there as like this chaotic force of like, just hating on Uncle Sam and like bringing him down. It's so funny. And then you got Destiny like just listening to this chaos and every now and then just like dying laughing. It's so funny. But yeah, anyway, that was a great video. And also Karantos is like a new guy. He hasn't been on streams much. But I mean, now he has in the past few days, but I'm sure there'll be some anti-joke on it. But initially when I saw him, it was because of the debate with him and Destiny, and I was like, who's this idiot here, like yelling out these dumb things? But he's actually really good. I like very not I don't enjoy his morals or anything, but he's very entertaining. He's clearly I wonder if his entire life is like a ironic mask or something. Like if he's not actually believes in the things he does and he's just like a big troll or something. I kind of get that point sometimes. But he's legitimately funny and intelligent or whatever. Like he'll have these witty comebacks where I'm like, there's something more going on behind this guy's eyes. You know, he's not as dumb as he comes across as. So it's interesting. But so far, I like him. Good addition to this Destiny Orbiter club. You know. Then I went back and I watched some this crazy epic portal debate, which is basically a physics debate about portals. And the funny thing is that he starts this video and it's like a 4-hour video, and he's like, all right, so this won't take long. It should take like 5 minutes or something. And it's like the epic portal debate #1, and there's like a part 2 as well, and they're both like many hours long. And I'm like, oh man. But that was really entertaining, seeing him rage at the chat and like dragging in calls and not being able to convey to them why his answers are the answers they are, and why they're correct and everything. But that was funny. Then I saw this another, because I saw that and I'm like, what other debates are there? There was this great one about traffic lights and intersections and stuff with Dan and Devin Nash, I think was his name, and where Destiny is clearly wrong, and he's arguing against the law and everything and being like, oh, I don't care about the law, blah blah blah. He's creating his own rules to kind of justify his worldview. And Dan is just like fighting so hard against it. It's just so funny. So this was a great debate. I'd recommend that people watch that. And this is probably the most passionate I've ever seen Destiny about anything ever. Yeah, it's just really funny. Then there was another. All these no jumper things were basically great. There was one with I think his name is Dick Masterson or something. Him and Destiny are funny. I've seen them a few times together, and that was a really funny podcast. And then there was this other one that apparently was really controversial because I don't know if I hope you can see my mouse, but the one at the bottom right, another no jumper podcast with Destiny on the right, the main guy Adam I think in the middle. And then this guy, I don't know who he is. I wrote his name somewhere. What was it? Richard Spencer. Like apparently he's a white supremacist or some like crazy political thing. He did something with the alt-right or something. I have no idea who he is, but apparently this is really controversial. But the thing I found interesting, the reason I included, like I didn't think this podcast was that interesting, but I brought it up because in the past, like I've listened to, I consume a lot of content that I don't agree with just because I find it interesting to hear other perspectives and stuff. But I've listened to a lot of like intellectual dark web podcasts and stuff. So I've listened to, I don't know if you count Joe Rogan there, but I've listened to maybe 1,000 episodes of Joe Rogan. I've listened to The Portal by Eric Weinstein. I listened to Sam Harris. I've listened to a bunch of Jordan Peterson stuff, basically. And I don't like them at all. I don't watch any of their stuff anymore, but because it's just so repetitive. And one thing I noticed in all those videos is that all the intellectual dark web stuff, maybe less Sam Harris, but a lot of the other stuff, they'll like jerk themselves off about how like, oh, we're doing the important conversations here and we're breaking new ground by having these discussions and all that. And I really feel like we're making progress here and it's so productive. And I wish all these people on the internet who were yelling at each other, I wish they would come together and be productive like we are, having these debates and discussions and talks and all these revolutionary insights and stuff. And it felt like when I was watching this with Destiny and this guy, whatever his name is, it felt like very similar energy, but they're like jerking themselves off about how they're being so civil here and having this, they're really thinking about important things. And it just doesn't come, it's like they're having the most boring conversation about like something that people have talked about a million times before. And to them, it feels like they're breaking new ground or anything, but it just comes across as like, very self-congratulatory and like, oh, how civilized we are or whatever. I'm probably not conveying this accurately, but basically I got the vibe here that that Destiny is falling into like a kind of intellectual dark web like guru kind of position, where a lot of his takes aren't really that grounded in data or anything, but they're grounded in like his life experience and stuff. But I don't know, it's really interesting case study to see from the other side. But anyway, that's that, I think. So This is probably a long one. I thought this would be like half an hour long, but there was a lot more to talk about than I thought. Goddamn Berserk, am I right? But yeah, so give me suggestions, movies, anime, TV shows, games, books, YouTube videos, whatever. I will almost, like I have so far, I will almost certainly consume something within this next month, probably. If it's an anime with 12 episodes or less, a movie that isn't a comedy, TV shows with 6 episodes or less, or maybe a bit more, but something like that. Then games that take 6 hours or less to finish, not too long. But that's it. So yeah, see you next month. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.